Over the past 15 years, we've seen many Minecraft servers come and go. In the early days, Minecraft graced our screens with their wacky inventions and stellar cast. More recently, we've seen the likes of TommyInnit and Technoblade rise to fame through their time on the Dream SMP. Now, these are just a few of the many, and I mean many, SMPs that have existed over the course of Minecraft's history. However, these SMPs have all eventually come to an end, faded into obscurity and, unfortunately, irrelevancy. Well, every server but one. What is that server, I hear you ask? Oh, I'm just kidding, you saw the title. Of course, it's Hermitcraft. If you've been living under a rock and somehow don't know what Hermitcraft is, boy, you've been missing out. Established in 2012 by Generic B, Hermitcraft has seen its members upload well over 5,000 videos across the 11 seasons. Whilst Hermits have come and gone with the passage of time, the server has remained consistently popular and entertaining to its fan base. This is in part due to the amazing cast of YouTubers on the server, notably Mumbo Jumbo and Grian, who have a combined subscriber count of well over 18 million. Yeah, 18 million. That's more than the entire population of Sweden and Denmark combined. Sorry Mojang, better luck next time. However, Hermitcraft's success also comes from the incredible variety of skill sets held by its members. While some are seasoned builders, others are redstone geniuses, and so I've dedicated the last 4 months of my life to figuring out what makes Hermitcraft so special. To do this, I divided my research into 5 key topics. First, we'll talk about the core elements of Minecraft, building and redstone. In these sections, I'll get to the heart of Hermitcraft's success, showing you the most important things you can learn from each Hermit's skill set. Using this knowledge, we'll move into a complete ranking of every Hermitcraft member currently active on the server, which will then nicely lead us into a more focused analysis of some of the server's more underrated members. In this section, I make it clear that just because some Hermits are less popular than others, it doesn't mean that they deserve less of your love. From this, we can take a look to the future and ask who will be Hermitcraft's next member. However, these subsections are all a smaller part of a much bigger puzzle. You see, I want to know what makes Hermitcraft tick. And so to finish off the video, I'll make sure to make it clear what the secret ingredient to Hermitcraft's success really is. And maybe you guys can let me know down in the comments what you think Hermitcraft's secret ingredient is. And maybe hit that subscribe button because this video has taken ages. Anyway, I've wasted enough of your time already. Let's get into the meat of this video. Let's talk about building. And who better to do that than me from 2 months ago? Take it away, me.
Daddy, look, there's camels. Yes, little beat-ups. They're tall. Unlike you. Ha 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 ha.
The Hermitcraft server is full of creators who each have their own unique way of building. However, I think these builders can be broken down into 6 core styles. The classicists, the aestheticians, the patchworkers, the colorists, the realists, and the all-rounders. Whilst not all of these players may be considered to be especially talented builders, they each bring a very different perspective to their builds. These perspectives, as weird and funky as they may be at times, can teach us important lessons about how and why we should build. So today, I'm going to teach you those lessons so you can finally stop saying, oh, I wish I could build like B-Dubs, and instead say, damn, I bet B-Dubs wishes he was me. These builders may have a style that, at face value, seems traditional, but in reality, they're actually quite a lot deeper than that. If you want to learn about a true classic Minecraft style, look no further than Hypnotized. Something that I think is really cool about Hypno's builds is that he can show us the beauty in the original block palette that Minecraft offers. Take his current base for instance. The blend of oak, cobblestone, glass may seem basic, but it really gives us a snapshot into the past, into the heart of Minecraft's building. By using blocks for what they are, for example using wood as wood or stone as stone, Hypno teaches us that playing Minecraft the way we used to play it is not just acceptable, but creative. His use of colour and repeating block palettes makes his build accessible. You don't have to squint to understand what Hypno's builds are. In this, we can see the real beauty in Hypno's builds, as he shows us that the old ways are just as good as the new, and that you don't really need an overly complicated and confusing technique and style to create something unique, clever and creative. All you really need to do is just play the game, and the builds will come in time. Skiz is another example of how you don't need to be a dedicated realist or a master of colour theory to build in Minecraft. Marked by his typical block palette of around 4 to 5 key blocks, Skiz shows us that we don't need an inventory full of random detailing blocks to make something look really cool. if you want to make something exactly like Skiz would, I'd recommend using a block palette of deep slate tiles and mangrove wood, because my god does that man love those blocks. However, what we also learn from Skiz is that building is not just an aesthetic, but rather an attitude. Skiz consistently takes a can-do attitude to building, often taking an experimental approach to try and fuse cool colours and concepts together to create builds that display his ideas. Take his pyramid in Season 10 for example. His use of a gradient on the build's exterior shows us that Skiz took on the challenge to learn how to create a gradient. And then if we look at the interior and his use of maps to create some sort of liminal space, we can see how Skiz challenged himself to use more experimental aspects of Minecraft to symbolise what he was trying to express in the build. In this, we see that Skiz is willing to try and learn new techniques to evolve his style, which, if you're watching this video, is probably what you want to do. So hey, looks like you're picking up some lessons already. Cub is what I would call a highly experimental classicist. By this I mean he uses a lot of the techniques of classical building, but in a really fun and experimental way. For example, in his Season 10 base, he uses a lot of repeating patterns to make his builds tileable, meaning he can essentially build the same thing over and over again to create a bigger, wackier structure. Now, whilst this might be seen as boring or repetitive, this act of repetition is actually a really cool part of this more classic aesthetic. By repeating his builds in segments, he can focus more on the high concept aspects of the build. For example, whilst his Season 10 base was surrounded by a wall made of repeating patterns, this uniformity helped to emphasise the craziness of the custom sculpt biome that the wall contained. In this, Cub uses a traditionalist concept to create a juxtaposition between the themes that his builds convey, which in itself is very experimental. So if you want to be like Cub, be like Skiz and Hypno, and then just add a dash of weirdness and wackiness, and bam, you're already on your way to becoming a 36-year-old man from Midwestern America. These builders find a concept, an idea or style and make their whole season fit that style, creating a perfectly themed base around a particular aesthetic. Beef's builds really capture all of the essential aspects of the aestheticist build style. One of the biggest parts of sticking to a single aesthetic is the block palette, and Beef shows us how a simple selection can perfectly convey an aesthetic. Take his Season 4 base. The use of red sand across his whole build creates that spacey atmosphere which instantly signifies what the build is supposed to be. Repeated block palettes are a big part of Beef's builds. Just look at Season 10 and his use of quartz, spruce and mud. It's clear that his base is supposed to be a ranch, and those blocks play a major role in that. From this we learn the basis that aesthetic building derives from, that being that block palette matters very, very much. Chev takes the basic principles of aesthetic building and expands on them through his experimentation with texture and more varied block palettes. Through Jevin, we see how an aesthetic can also be created through a variety of creative choices, which adhere to that aesthetic. This is seen in his Season 10 base, as he experimented with a variety of stony blocks and textures to construct the castle at the centre of his base. By sticking with the traditional grey block palette expected from a castle build and blending it with elements of texturing and light, particularly through his use of andesite, he shows us how aesthetic can be elevated through the use of more complex building techniques from other styles of building. The aesthetic build style is not just a matter of block choice, however. In fact, Impulse teaches us that the creation of aesthetic builds relies heavily on the lore that we tie to them. In this way, Impulse ties lore to aesthetic and aesthetic to lore, letting the two factors influence each other in some really interesting ways. If we look at his Season 10 base, for example, we can see how Impulse's lore heavily shaped the aesthetic of his build. A great instance of this is the flashing evacuate sign on top of his cyberpunk style towers. The use of the word evacuate ties perfectly to the lore of his season, as his base depicted a world in which robots revolted and forced the human population to flee their cyberpunk homes. By fusing this with the aesthetical choice of using copper bulbs and deep purple colour scheme in the build, Impulse blurred the lines between aesthetic and story. In this, he teaches us a really cool approach to building, that being the use of lore to motivate you to build a cool and aesthetically focused base. Whilst the aforementioned Hermits excel in many different facets of aesthetic-centered building, Rendog is the master of all in this build style. To build like Ren, you really need to get lore in your brain and shape your entire build around that lore. I mean, you need to really get into your lore. In Season 10, Ren had blueprints, custom models, and lore segments made so that he could center his entire base around his sci-fi gigacorp aesthetic. He then blended this with his use of bold blue, orange, and white blocks to create a completely immersive immersive environment. By piecing lore into every single aspect of his build style, Ren teaches us that the best way to achieve a particular aesthetic when building is by tying lore to our choices of colour, shape and structure. Whilst his builds might not utilise some of the fancier techniques such as gradients, his lack of overly textured building is what gave the Gigacorp aesthetic its sense of self. If you want to be an aesthetic centred building, go to Ren, he knows it all. Patchworking is the technique of piecing a build together bit by bit to eventually create something bigger and more extravagant. If you want to learn about patchworking, look no further than Etho. Throughout nearly every single one of his series, Etho has shown how you don't need a complete vision before you build, but rather just one idea that your base can grow and expand from. Take his season 10 base for example. His house organically grew throughout the season, as Etho came up with ideas for how he wanted to use the base and make it grow and change. Through this practice, Etho also teaches us another core tenet of building. Don't be attached to your builds. I think we all have a bit of a habit where we complete a build, then refuse to touch it again afterwards because we want to preserve that original build. What we can actually see through Etho's builds, however, is that you should constantly alter and tweak your builds, because that way you can let it grow and change. Now, I must admit, this sort of style does tend to lend itself to interior design, as it is a lot easier to change the aesthetic of a build from room to room rather than from structure to structure. Because of this, Etho also builds inside out, often focusing on interior first and then exterior. This could be seen in the Man Cave and his Let's Play series, as the base has slowly grown and changed over time. The constant evolution and change in structure teaches us a lot, but what I think is the most valuable lesson we can learn from Etho is that we should just go with the flow and see where our builds take us. Exuma's builds provide us with a really good insight into the core aspects of building. By constantly experimenting with a range of techniques, Exuma teaches us that your builds don't have to be defined by one basic style, but rather by an attitude. In terms of block palette, if you want to build like Exuma, you should focus on bringing contrast into your builds. Contrast basically means that there is a pair of opposites in your builds, particularly in terms of colour and light. For example, Exuma's latest builds in Hermitcraft 11 uses a contrast between orange and blue to highlight two sides of his copper golem shop. Now, if you really want to be technical, you can use a colour wheel to work this out. As we can see here, orange is opposite blue on the colour wheel, and that means that they therefore contrast, which is what makes Exuma's build so appealing. However, what Exuma's build style is best known for is its lack of defined aesthetic. X just kind of builds what he likes. His builds, like Loglands in Season 10, tend to take on a bit of a patchwork feel, with different colours and aesthetics being placed next to each other depending on what cool things Exuma feels like building at the time. From this, we learn the core tenet of Minecraft building. Just build! I know this video is really about learning how to build, but the number one piece of advice I could ever give you is to just go out there and get something built. Next up in our series of patchworkers is XB Crafted. Like Etho and Exuma, XB often goes with the flow, letting his build ideas come to him over time as he constructs his base. Unlike Etho and Exuma, however, XB takes a more traditional approach to his builds, sticking to a wider theme and block palette that he then continues throughout his entire base. XB's patchwork style isn't necessarily about blending aesthetics, but more about piecing his cool ideas together to create a bigger build. Take his Season 10 base for example. He stuck very much to an ocean monument aesthetic, but within this aesthetic he cobbled together a variety of unique and cool ideas. I mean, if you just look at the massive statue of Keralis at the centre of his base, or his collaborations with B-dubs and Keralis on different aspects of the build, you can see how XB's base grows in that organic patchwork style. In this, we learn that patchwork and aesthetic can go hand in hand, and that creativity is, at least most of the time, fluctuating, fun, and collaborative. These builders build in a style that is almost entirely unique to themselves. Unlike other members of the server, they simply cannot be categorized, as they simply do as they want. At this point, Wells Knight is basically a castle. No one loves a castle more than this man, to the point where I would argue that he has mastered this obsession of his. A big part of his subtle and clever ways of adding detail to build is not through colour, but through shape. Take for example his Japanese castle this season. The colour palette is relatively simple, consisting mainly of brown, white and black blocks. However, Wells still managed to achieve a great level of depth of this building. How? His use of shape. By using sloped roofs in this build, Wells added a depth that would typically be created through a shift in colour. The same goes for his windows. By indenting them into the wall, he adds an extra level of detail to the build, making it just that much more awe-inspiring. If you want to learn how to use shape to enhance your builds, look no further than World's Night, my friends, because he is the master. Zombie Cleo is another creator that is honestly like no other. Their use of the armor stand mod is masterful, and if you want to learn about building in Minecraft with the help of a few small mods, look no further than Cleo. Their expert use of the scale feature in the armor stand mod allows them to add extra minute details to their builds that would otherwise be unfeasible in vanilla Minecraft. Also, Cleo teaches us that we need to be patient with our builds. If we want to build like Cleo, you've really got to go slow and pay close attention to detail. Another major mark of Cleo's build style is their ability to create creatures, such as the dragon in Season 9 or the giant monster in Season 10. When building these creatures, Cleo makes use of colour and contrast to create creatures which stand out across the server. By blending these techniques with some armor stand magic, you too can create something bold and awe-inspiring. Zedaf plays Minecraft in a way that focuses far less on building and way more on the experience. Because of this, his builds can often create really immersive environments that allow you to focus on the game itself. If you take a look at his Season 10 base, you can see how he used muted colours as well as a stone spruce block palette to create a base that was easy on the eye. By not overwhelming us with crazy build techniques, Zed gives us space to engage with some of the lesser known elements of the game, such as villager chicken jockeys, without getting distracted by mega builds and harsh contrasts. Zed lets his builds blend in with the environment, often sticking to a natural block palette and the colours that surround his builds. From this, he teaches us to let the environment shape our build, while we focus on the more interesting and exciting aspects of the game. Grian suffers from barge obsession syndrome. I swear to God, that man will never get over his love for the barge, and I honestly love him for that. If we take a look back at basically any season since Season 7, we see Grian use the same spruce and white glass block palette again and again. Whilst these builds may have evolved and changed slightly over time, it's clear that Grian really loves this block palette, and I think that's pretty cool. I think we all have those few blocks that we use again and again, so I think in that sense, Grian is a man of the people. In this, Grian teaches us to accept that we all have cool and unique styles that, if it ain't broke, well, there's no point fixing it. These players all use colour, light and contrast in really unique ways, allowing certain aspects of their builds to pop like no other. If you want to learn how to make bold choices of colour in nearly every build, look no further than Smallish Beans. Joel is a true master of colour, particularly in his use of block colours to create a vibrant atmosphere that defies the rigid realism typically expected from Minecraft builds. He achieves this mainly through experimentation. A big part of Joel's building process is his use of Litematica to bring his builds onto the server. By first planning his builds in creative, Joel is able to explore different colour combinations at a large scale, meaning he can really tweak and change things until he creates something that's perfect. This sort of process is really vital for the colorist build style, as it lets you experiment with the burden of actually having to go and collect resources. This also allows Joel to experiment with the shapes and blocks in his builds, as he typically makes use of colourful blocks like candles and stained glass to create visual illusions that defy your typical expectations of Minecraft builds. Joel really covers all bases of the colorist style, but if you especially want to learn about the creative process for experimentation with colour, he is most definitely your guy. Tango is someone who constantly claims that they're not a builder, when in reality, he definitely is. His building talents have developed a lot over the past few years, and a big part of that is his developing use of colour in his builds. Unlike most colorists, Tango tends to use dark colours in his builds, using deep slate and black stone alongside other blocks like tuff and stone to create a contrast between light and dark. Just take a look at his current exterior of Decked Out 3. By using dark colours in the foreground and light colours in the background, Tango places emphasis on the approach to Decked Out, rather than the terraforming surrounding it. This teaches us a really important lesson about how perspective and positioning can play a big part in the use of colour in building. His manipulation of contrast and perspective, alongside his use of colour, showed us how colorists focus not only on extravagant uses of colour, but also on how the player will perceive that colour when viewing the build in game. Pearl brings a very unique perspective to building with colour, as she makes use of both shape and colour to create some really interesting builds. One part of Pearl's style is her use of vibrant and bold colours, typically of orange and red hues. Her block palette, which often consists of brightly coloured blocks like dyed wool and coloured terracotta, shows us how we can cleverly insert warmth into our builds. If we take a look at her Season 9 base, we can see how she uses shape within her builds to emphasise these choices of colour. For example, the use of sharp curves alongside bright psychedelic colours at the centrepiece of the base gave her Season 9 builds the cool alien vibe that she was really going for. In this, we can see how the use of colour is not simply about being bold and flashy, but also about our use of shape. Pearl therefore teaches us to be bold, experimental, and wild with our use of shape, so we can accentuate our colour palettes even more. The term gradient is casually thrown around in the building community to the extent that the word no longer seems to make any sense. In its most basic form, a gradient is the transition from one colour to another by using a lot of other colours in between. False is the master of these gradients, constantly shifting colour palettes in her builds to blend components of the builds together. This is seen throughout all of her work, but I think this is most clear in Season 10 of Hermitcraft. Throughout her base, we can see how she uses clever block combinations to transition between different colours and hues. A major advantage of this technique is that, from a distance, your build looks a lot more cohesive. Typically, if you use a lot of colour in your builds, when you step back and take a look from a distance, it can be kind of distracting. However, what False's builds show us is that by using gradients we can eliminate jarring transitions of colour and instead make something that looks really good from both close up and far away. She's a clever one, that False, isn't she? Gem shows us that whilst things like gradients can help stop your colours from being too bold, it's actually okay to have some bold delineations in colour sometimes. A big part of Gem's build style is her use of contrast to create highlights, often through the opposition of greens and whites. This is clear in her Season 9 base, as the use of a bold green roof alongside bright white ridges allows the roof to stand out in a really unique way. By sticking to this colour palette across the entire build, she created a large mega build which takes these core tenets of colourist building and enlarges them to that typical YouTuber scale. In this, Gem teaches us to stand out and let our build shine. Yes, our colours may come across as a bit pompous and flashy, but isn't that kind of the point? These builders emulate reality through their builds. Mumbo's build style has most definitely evolved over time. Originally, his build palette consisted pretty much entirely of iron blocks, smooth stone and oak, and the occasional leaf block. However, since Season 10, his build style has really evolved into what I describe as the quintessential realist style. He treats his builds very cinematically, making sure to repeatedly view his builds from different angles whilst focusing on colour and depth. To achieve this in a more realist fashion, he uses techniques such as glass blending, where coloured glass is used to soften gradients and make colours more delicate on the eye. He also uses a lot of texturing in his builds, using a variety of different blocks to what some might call a busy environment. And yet, despite all of these fancy techniques that Mumbo has learned over the past 2 years, I think what he really teaches us is that it's never too late to evolve your build style. You just need to stick it out and work hard, and in time, you will work it out. Joe's build style presents a very literal take on the realist style of building. By literal, I mean literal. He literally takes real world things and just transforms them into a blocky Minecraft format. He does this by essentially taking a reference and finding a block for block equivalent of every aspect to that reference, which he then builds in game. This was abundantly clear through his building in Season 10, as he used real world blueprints and maps to essentially create an in-game diorama of the Homedale labs. In this, Joe focuses heavily on the visual elements of his builds, rather than their practical use. For example, he used ice for windows in his Season 10 build to try and match the reflective nature of real life glass. Whilst he could have just used Minecraft glass to do this, his choice of ice shows his focus on emulating reality in his own unique way, rather than in the more traditional way that Minecraft usually leans in favour of. Basically, if you want to transform reality into Minecraft, go to Joe and become his disciple, because he is really the master. Keralis, like Joe, is very dedicated to bringing real world structures into the game. However, it's safe to say that Keralis takes a more whimsical perspective on this, taking some creative liberties to construct his own perception of reality. One way that this is achieved is through extreme attention to detail, to copy the more esoteric parts of real world creations into Minecraft. For example, when looking at his current Roman Empire base, we can see how he uses blocks in creative ways to emulate reality, such as putting buttons in shelf blocks to look like open shutters with a handle attached. Or if we look at his Season 10 base, we can see how he uses copper to mimic rust to bring real world processes to the game. This focus on a detail at a micro level creates gorgeously realistic builds that look great both up close and from a distance. In that, we learn a very important lesson from Crealis, that being that little details can go a long way. Realism is, however, not only about bringing man-made structures into the game, but it's also about carrying the beauty of Mother Nature into our builds. Scar is the master of this, as he uses light and colour to create extremely detailed organic builds. Light is a major part of Scar's terraforming. By using highlights as well as the natural lighting that Minecraft has to offer, Scar often attempts to emulate our real-world perception of nature. This is perhaps most obvious in the giant redwoods that he created in Season 10. By using both variations in colour as well as natural sunlight, Scar was able to create the effect of light pushing through the tree's leaves. This would not, however, have been achieved without the disconnect that Scar creates between a block's literal purpose and its visual purpose. By this I mean he rarely uses wood to create wooden textures, but rather other blocks that resemble wood. We can see this again in the redwood trees, as he boldly uses red sandstone to highlight the light passing through the tree. Through this, Scar teaches us that the laws of colour, light and texture play a major part in the construction of organic realist builds, as they can not only enhance the beauty of our builds, but also make them feel more real and immersive. B-Dubs takes a very artistic approach to his building. He treats his builds like a canvas by bringing a lot of the core tenets of painting into his builds. It's honestly so clever and unique how he constructs these builds. By using tools like Axiom and camera tweaks, B-Dubs meticulously pre-plans his build, focusing on perspective to ensure that his builds look the best from the angle that they typically be viewed from. If you want to learn more about these tools, there's a really good video on his channel that basically explains how he does this, which I'll be sure to link down in the description, so be sure to check it out. What makes B-Dubs so special is the time he dedicates to his build, often spending days on adding small details and finishing touches. Through this, he's mastered the skill of changing a thing then stepping back to take a look at it. Practicing skills is vital to building like B-Dubs, so if you really want to be like him, you gotta master that. This builder does a bit of anything and everything all of the time. Doc has some insane but pretty hidden building talents, which tend to incorporate all of the different build styles that we've discussed today. He's been known to create more basic traditional structures, essentially using only cobblestone for his entire base in Season 10. He's also had periods of focusing wholly on one single aesthetic, such as in Season 8 where he created a weird extraterrestrial base with Rendog. At times he can work in patchwork, piecing his bases together bit by bit to fit around his redstone projects. He's also a master of colour, using dark gradients in Season 11 to emphasize the brightness of the ice. Now, he may not be much of a realist, but he is most definitely an all-rounder who teaches us to build what we want, when we want.
Do you ever get bored? Do you feel lonely? Are you a massive waste of space?
Well, not anymore you're not. By subscribing to Ginger Jeb, you will become faster, bouncier, and stronger. So subscribe today. Accessories sold separately.
Hopper slab, hopper slab, hopper slab, hopper etho slab.
I hate redstone. There it is. I said it. I really don't like redstone. Hell, I've made whole videos about how much I just don't understand it because, well, it's confusing. I'm sure you feel the same. Circuits are weird, nothing makes sense, and what the hell even is bud powering? However, despite our evident lack of knowledge of redstone, I strongly believe that we should all make an effort to learn some of the fundamentals. And who better to teach us than some of Minecraft's most experienced players? The Hermits. Now, whilst every hermit may not necessarily be good at redstone, they can each teach us something different about how we can use redstone in game. Whether that be methods for learning the game's weird mechanics, or exemplars of what good redstone really is. Hermitcraft provides us with some really strong insights into how simple redstone can be. And so today, I am going to walk you through how redstone is used on the Hermitcraft server, focusing on 5 key categories. the novices, the tutorialists, the inventors, the game makers, and the animators. Whilst these categories may illustrate different skill levels, it's safe to say that each hermit can teach us a lesson. So join me, in fact come along with me, as we delve into the weird world of redstoning on the Hermitcraft server. These hermits frankly know very little about redstone. What makes them unique, however, is their attitude for trying to learn a bit of it. Now, Skizzleman is pretty meh at redstone. However, he shows us that if you want to learn something, all you have to do is put the hours in. Throughout his time on Hermitcraft, he's really focused on getting his skills to a new level, developing this skill by going back and taking new revisions of old projects. I mean, just look at his mangrove farm this season. If you compare that to the one he made in season 10, you can clearly see how he's improved. Not only is he using more intense mechanics like moss farms and timers in his builds, but he's also made the farm look a lot more aesthetically appealing. Well, kind of. Skizz as a content creator often uses his community to his advantage. By creating contraptions on stream, he can gain insight from his audience and get a better understanding of what the hell he's making. Skizz really learns not by tutorial but by trial and error, attempting to make designs on his own. Now, this might be a bit slower as it takes time for him to learn and understand what the hell he's doing, but in the long run, this approach can definitely be beneficial. One of the key benefits of this is he shows us that not everything has to be condensed into some perfect refined form. By using redstone both functionally and for entertainment, he can gain a pretty decent understanding of the different capabilities of redstone. Just take a look back at his pyramid last season. He blends both the traditional aspects of redstone with some of the newer mechanics to make a build that was really cool. For example, his skeletons that would run around and shoot players as they move through just simply use minecarts rather than overcomplicating it with timing circuits. But he also uses Skulk to play custom voice lines when players are in a certain element of the build. By blending both simple and newer techniques, Skizz really elevates his skill. Because of this, Skizz teaches us that learning is a process, and that defining past projects is okay. By constantly coming back and making revisions to his old work, he can expand his skills from a very traditional understanding of redstone to involving new and more interesting mechanics. So if you want to be like Skizz, take your time, learn, don't just copy other people. Grian's main focus on redstone this season has been just trying to understand the real basics of redstone. A big part of how he's been able to build his skill set is through the support of others like Etho and Gem. Now, of course, you aren't gonna have a pro like Etho on your world to help you, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn like Grian. You see, Grian lacks a lot of the foundational understanding of what certain circuits can do. This leads him to take more interesting and alternative ways of completing a task. I mean, just look at the Cora's farm this season. His use of pulse delays and pulse lengtheners to create a timing circuit might not be the most efficient way of doing it, but it gets the job done. Also, this way of doing redstone means that he can learn on the job. Rather than by constantly trying to figure out things he doesn't understand, by having people around him that he can learn from, he gets a better understanding of the game. In this, he shows us that there's really no shame in asking for some help and reaching out to a friend for some advice. You don't know Etho, but I'm sure you've got a friend that knows some redstone that can probably help you out. Also, his lack of specialized skill means that he can dip into a lot of different redstone technologies. Rather than just sticking to one certain type of redstone, this man has tried a lot of different things. I mean, look at last season and his use of buildstone in his base. Whilst it might not compare to say Mumbo, his work showed us that he can do more than just the practical, boring parts of redstone like farms. In this, we can see the benefit of not knowing a lot about redstone. By not knowing a lot, we don't pigeonhole ourselves into things that we already understand. Instead, we get to try a lot of different and more interesting ways of approaching redstone, all the while learning more and more about the game with the help of friends. Gem is frequently collaborative with her use of redstone. Whilst helping Grian, she also manages to learn some of the core mechanics herself. By being very engaged with her projects, always asking questions and showing a decent interest in what she's making, she allows her skills to grow even more. While she might not be quite as clueless as Grian, she doesn't know a lot, but her constant curiosity means that she can elevate her skills beyond the basic. Now, Gem does tend to use redstone more functionally. She often uses tutorials to learn redstone and asks for help when building farms. Rather than, making things like buildstone, Gem uses redstone to get a job done, which is honestly okay. She knows her skill level and rarely jumps into huge redstone projects that she knows she won't understand. By sticking to the simpler jobs, she knows that rather than jumping straight into the deep end, she can learn to swim at her own pace. Now, of course, she has worked on bigger projects in the past, creating her own redstone storage system at one point, but realistically, what Gem shows us is that not knowing a lot is kind of okay. As long as you're learning and trying to grow your knowledge in redstone, you can develop your skills further than you'd ever imagine. Zombie Cleo is like a lot of the other people down here on the list. They accept that they don't really understand redstone, but they're always willing to learn. One big part of how Cleo learns is by experimenting in survival. This is really unique to most other hermits, as typically hermits will just make something in creative and then bring it into the game. By experimenting in survival, Cleo allows themselves to get a better understanding of the game in real time. Rather than working really hard using mechanics that they might not understand, Cleo spends that time working it out, and that can be really beneficial. Another part of Cleo's charm is that they make use of their community. By making redstone on stream, Cleo can get help from the people around them. This teaches us that learning is a process that takes time. We don't have to overplan to get a good understanding of redstone. In this, we can see the benefit of redstoning like Cleo, because they show us that working hard and getting the job done in survival can have some pretty big payoffs. Scar has a past of being pretty silly when it comes to redstone. He's spent hours before messing about trying to make the simplest thing work. Now, I'd argue that this is more about his character than his actual redstone skill. I mean, just look at the moss farm this season. He actually has quite a good awareness of some of the game's core mechanics, and this is really obvious in how he's understood Etho's original moss farm and then made his own from it. Now, you could argue that Scar, compared to some of the other hermits, is still kinda clueless, and you're probably right. But this season, we really see him pushing himself to take his redstone to another level. His character might make him seem clueless, but time and time again we see him put the hours in to try and learn and understand redstone to a level that he hasn't before. Now, this kind of shows us that whilst we might tell ourselves we're not good at something, we actually can be. I mean, look at the ticket offices he's made in the past in places like Scarland. Whilst the circuits might not necessarily be tidy and all fancy, he gets the job done. So basically, if you want to be like Scar, maybe doubt yourself a bit, because somehow that makes him even better at redstone. Redstone with B-dubs is iconic. Now, kind of unlike Scar, B-dubs pretends to be not clueless, even though he kind of is. But then at the same time, he also kind of isn't. You see, he always finds his own solution to redstone projects, rather than following like a boring tutorial. This leads him to find kind of unique and strange ways of getting things done. I mean, look at his bamboo farm from last season. It was messy, kind of inefficient, but it got the job done, and it also helped him learn. This focus on learning whilst building means that he can understand the game mechanics as he goes. Rather than pushing himself to learn things that he may never even need to know in Minecraft, B-dubs takes the time to educate himself on the core mechanics of redstone. He also, like a lot of the hermits, makes use of the people around him. He shows us that it's okay to not understand things. As long as we don't give in to that cluelessness, we can really learn. He also teaches us to challenge ourselves to try and learn the unknown. Rather than just following tutorials, B-dubs shows us that by trying to get it done yourself, you might actually learn a thing or two. So maybe if you want to learn some of the more basic mechanics in Minecraft, maybe have a look at B-dubs. These hermits frequently use tutorials to get the basic redstone jobs done. They show us that there's actually no shame in just getting a bit of help. Joel is the epitome of putting redstone kind of on the back burner whilst he focuses on other more important tasks. He really shows us that redstone doesn't have to be for everyone. I mean, just look at season 10, he put very little focus on his redstone build. I mean, he created a tree farm and a sort of sorting system, but redstone is never really the focus of his videos. However, this does show us something quite important that we should learn, is that redstone doesn't always have to be the center of what you do. Some people are just builders, and that's okay. Redstone can just be a really useful thing for utility. Basically, Joel uses redstone to fuel his building, and that's pretty much it. He makes farms to gather resources to build buildings, and that's fine. He really just teaches us that redstone can be a strong foundation, and that foundation can really let you excel in other aspects of the game that might be more interesting to you, like building. Jevin really knows his lane when it comes to redstone projects. He rarely tries to reach out and do complicated things, instead he stays with what he knows. And again, that's okay. He often uses redstone for practical reasons, like making mob or creeper farm, and oftentimes these farms come from tutorials that he's watched online. However, a benefit of this approach is that at this point, he kinda has the tutorials known off by heart. He doesn't need to go back and watch YouTube videos to teach him how to build these farms anymore, because he's just built them so many times. Because of this, he's able to separate redstone from his content. In Season 10, he had a huge farming area that he rarely showed on camera, but this also is a really good strategy that you can use in your own worlds. I, for example, have a big farming area in my Forever world that I rarely visit, but when I need resources, it's there, and that's really helpful. By focusing less on innovation and more on just getting stuff done, Jev shows us that redstone doesn't have to be the main event. Maybe redstone just isn't your thing, and again, that's okay. Now, Vintage Beef is kind of different. He has a bit of a history with redstone, using it for quite silly things. In Season 7, he created a giant animated llama, which was frankly a bit odd, but it also shows us that he has a pretty basic knowledge of redstone. This basic knowledge can be really helpful, because it allows him to get these sort of weird builds done. There's a long-running joke in the Hermitcraft and Minecraft communities that Beef is the one that taught Etho everything about redstone. And whilst this possibly may not be true, he definitely is clued in on the basics of redstone. Because of this, it means that he can pick and choose when he wants to put the effort in and when he wants to just follow a tutorial. Sometimes he might build a wacky thing like an animated llama, and other times he might just want a farm to be running in the background in his world. And that's kinda cool. He shows us that tutorials don't have to be used for every part of redstone. Sometimes we can use a tutorial for a farm, and then not use it for our wacky strange builds. Basically, have fun with redstone, because it can actually be quite entertaining. False has been known to follow a tutorial from time to time. Mainly these tutorials are used for farms, which then go on to fuel her shops. Now, this may be seen as a little bit lazy, but it's actually quite efficient. By adapting tutorials and taking feedback from her audience, False is learning things on the way. Whilst people might criticize someone from using a tutorial, I'm sure you can relate to the idea that over time, by watching these tutorials, you gain more and more knowledge about the game. Now, False has a real big focus on trial and error. By accepting that she's not redstone inclined but making an effort to learn, she shows us that tutorials can be a really useful resource. She also teaches us that redstone isn't easily learnt for everyone, but that basic understanding that we can get from watching tutorials can help us learn things, and one day, you never know, you might not need the tutorial if you redstone like False. Corrales can be quite cheeky with redstone because he's not really that fussed on following some of the more boring rules we use in game. For example, in Season 6, he used a lot of zero-tick farms to maximise production. Whilst the redstone community can disapprove of these sort of farms, they get the job done, and that's okay. He definitely has a bit of a knack for the more technical sides of Minecraft. I mean, just watch his Create series and you can see that he does slightly get things like redstone. However, most of his redstone projects really just exist for resource production, and that's alright. You know, sometimes we just need things to be going on in the back whilst we get on with the things we really enjoy. Now, Wells makes kind of a different use of tutorials in his builds. In fact, he's made tutorials himself. By watching tutorials and then learning from them, he teaches us that we can actually learn quite a lot from a simple tutorial. He often spends time trying to understand what he's actually making. By engaging with his redstone creations, he can understand certain elements of a contraption and then replicate that later on. Rather than just building things, he makes the real effort to explain what he's doing to his audience. By talking us through the farms he makes, we can actually learn quite a lot about redstone. He also shows us the importance of asking questions when building redstone. By being curious and trying to learn more, we can take a tutorial and elevate it, make it part of our general skill set. So If you want to be like Wells, take the time to ask questions. Take the time to learn things yourself, because putting a bit of effort in can go a long way. Hypno has a pretty strong foundational understanding of Redstone. Whilst at times he's been known to use pre-existing designs and tutorials, basic understanding of the mechanics means that he can grow his Redstone from basic to something pretty cool. He understands the logic behind a lot of the more simple game mechanics, which means that when he builds his farms, he can add little cool things that make them more efficient. Look at his iron farm this season. By attaching auto crafters to it, he's taken what is a pretty basic iron farm and elevated it to something new and different. He teaches us that Redstone can evolve as our knowledge does, and that's okay. We can go back, refine our builds, and add new things to them, because that makes our Redstone all the much better. These hermits choose to do Redstone in their own unique way. Their skill level is supported by their pre-existing understanding of Minecraft's core Redstone mechanics, meaning that they can create some of their own contraptions. Exumavoid is the epitome of an inventor. His history with myth busting has allowed him to get a really good understanding of some of the edge cases and cool technical features that the devs have added over the years. Because of this, he can develop his Redstone skills over time. This typically is accelerated through the use of his community. By building Redstone on stream, he gets help from his viewers, which can also be really helpful. But the main thing we can learn from Exuma is the power of finding our own way of doing things. Recently, he's gotten into using Redstone to animate his base, using copper golems to bring it to life. Rather than following tutorials for this, he used his understanding of Minecraft's mechanics to create his own interesting contraptions. In this, he cares a lot less about efficiency and a lot more about doing things his own way, and in this, he learns things as he goes. He's also always just happy to help the other hermits out. Whilst he might not know Redstone to the same level as say Etho, he's got a really strong understanding, which means that he can help everyone else out. Basically, Exuma teaches us that whilst tutorials can be helpful, when we make ourselves create our own contraptions, we can learn a lot about the game, and that can be really helpful. Joe Hills takes a lot of inspiration from the people around him when using Redstone. By being aware of the other hermits, he can follow their lead and then create his own stuff. He often takes existing mechanics and makes them kind of funky and strange, mainly using Redstone for entertainment rather than function. I mean, take the arrow store he recently made. By taking inspiration from people like Etho, he was able to create a big wall of dispensers that shoots arrows at innocent passers-by. This is strange and kind of funny, which shows that Redstone doesn't have to have a purpose. It can mainly just exist to experiment, and that's fine. Rather than using Redstone for the fun of others, he uses Redstone to entertain himself. This is really important if you're struggling to get into Redstone, because it doesn't always have to be impressive and cool, it can just be for your own amusement. So maybe if you're trying to get into Redstone, just take a leaf out of Joe's book. Ren's use of Redstone is often motivated by his desire to learn how things work in game. Unlike the novices though, he has a decent base understanding, meaning that he can easily blend Redstone in with his builds. Just take a look at Season 10. He has tons of farms hidden around his base, which all perfectly blend into the aesthetic. By having that decent understanding of basic Redstone mechanics, he really gets the line between what does and doesn't need to be automated. Rather than making giant farms that maximize rates and efficiency, he focuses on learning and creating at the same time. For example, the piston door he made last season. It was maybe not the most efficient piston door, but it was cool, and I really liked it. This can all be summed up in the words Renstone. Ren gets things done in strange, maybe less efficient ways, but his own way, and that's pretty great. Basically, he teaches us that Redstone doesn't have to be done to an extreme scale to get the job done. Sometimes it can just exist to fit in with our base, and that's okay. XB also has a pretty solid pre-existing knowledge of Redstone, meaning that he can make a lot of basic contraptions himself. Because of this, he can often focus on creativity rather than productivity. For example, this season he's got melon and pumpkin farms that don't necessarily maximize rates and efficiency, but instead look really cool under the floor of his base as they operate in a kind of Mexican wave fashion. By ignoring annoying practicalities and efficiency, he's able to just have fun with Redstone, and that's really inspirational. Another example of this is in his current base, where he uses shelf mechanics to add a hidden door to his base, which shows us that Redstone doesn't have to be boring and overly efficient. He is also kind of like Ren in that he makes things kind of small and shows us that that's okay. If you have areas in your world that you're constantly loading, you don't need some farm that's going to get all the blocks you need overnight. By having things that might be less efficient but that run in the background, he gets things done quickly and efficiently, which is really important when you just want to have fun. Impulse originally began began as one of the most important and influential tutorial creators on the Minecraft scene. I mean, he created the item filter, which revolutionized storage systems forever. More recently, he's evolved to focus more on using redstone for aesthetic purposes. In his current base, he's got a door made of boats. This isn't really efficient and looks kind of strange, but it's also really cool. This shows that he's very clued into the overall redstone scene. This is similar to some of his work in Season 10, where he made a silverfish cannon that wasn't his own design, but was pretty cool. His deep understanding of the central redstone mechanics means that he quickly builds farms, meaning that these sort of projects kind of get put in the background. He's open to following tutorials and learning from others, but he's also good at showcasing the community's work. Because of this, he's moving towards sort of gamifying redstone at times. For example, last season he made Metro Mayhem, which was really cool. However, as time has gone on, Impulse has become less focused on innovating with redstone, instead focusing more on aesthetic builds. But this doesn't really matter. He shows us that technical ability does not have to be our sole skill. We can often blend redstone with builds and builds with redstone, taking things that might be dull to us and making them more interesting. Basically, redstone can be fun if you just blend it with what you already like. Etho has been in the Minecraft community for a long time, meaning he's experimented with pretty much every redstone mechanic. From day one, Etho has been at the forefront of inventing redstone technologies. I mean, look at the boat dispenser or even the Etho hopper clock. They were cool and really interesting contraptions that made his channel blow up. By having a really strong foundational knowledge of the game, he's able to create new contraptions which drive wider innovation within the redstone community. For example, his wind charge launcher this season is really cool and it makes great use of his pre-existing awareness of wind charge technology, but it also elevates the experience of the server because people are just whizzing about in the sky, and that's really cool. Another big effect of this is his ability to develop his own unique redstone technologies that he can then use in games. For example, in Frogger, he made his own queuing system by blending previously existing technologies. Basically, Etho teaches us that once we get that really strong understanding of the game's core mechanics, we can pretty much do anything we want, so maybe getting into redstone could be worth it in the long run. Doc is quite similar to Etho in the fact that he's had a very long career in the redstone community. However, unlike others, he's stayed very dialed into the redstone community, meaning that he can grow his skills even further. The hive mind is essential to his success. If you don't know what that is, basically it's a big group of redstone creators who all work together towards developing redstone technologies. By being so closely connected with these redstoners, Doc is always at the forefront of redstone innovation. People like Methods are really important to this, as he spends hours with them in creative worlds developing and refining mechanics. I mean, look at his voodoo machine from both this season and last season. He's been developing that for ages. Because of that, he's really refined the project to something that is really awe-inspiring. His projects are also quite often developed in bites. Rather than focusing on just one thing, he takes an idea and moves with it in lots of different directions. Take his teleportation network last season, for example. He used it to teleport through dimensions, to teleport across the server, and also to get back to his base. This slowly evolved through time, which shows us that redstone isn't static but constantly changing. Basically, if you want to have that extra higher elevated understanding of redstone, you've got to be clued in with what the community is talking about, because that's how you can be like Doc. These hermits use redstone to create a game within a game. Zed frequently gamifies Minecraft through his use of redstone. I mean, just take a look at his Season 10 base, and you can see a myriad of different ways of using redstone to create games. For example, his enchantment setup made use of randomizers and signal strength manipulation to create something that was kinda cool and strange. And he also made a Dance Dance Revolution style brewing setup, which is interesting and strange and really cool. He uses redstone for fun, rather than basic boring practicalities. By using redstone to emulate game mechanics, this sometimes means that he's not as efficient as he could be. He made a furnace last season that basically worked only if he jumped up and down next to it. However, this means that he can have more fun, and I'm all for that. Zed takes the simple mechanics of Minecraft and uses them to bring life to his bases. By doing this, Zed can never be bored in his world because he's constantly doing fun things with redstone. Whilst it might not be as efficient as other people on this list, Zed's style is really interesting. Pearl originally was going to be placed in the novices category because historically she hasn't used much redstone. However, last season she really proved me wrong. This can be seen through the creation of Pearl, Pearl's own rendition of Wordle within Minecraft. Pearl spent countless hours trying to understand the core mechanics by building item filters, lighting systems, and even custom music setups. By spending time refining the concept after completing the build, Pearl was able to use Pearl to grow her redstone understanding to really cool levels. Because of this, she's more than just a novice, she's a gamifier. She makes Minecraft into something new and different, and that's really cool. Pearl really shows us the power of determination, as her constant effort to improve her redstone skills last season means that she's really promising in the redstone scene. Because of this, Pearl teaches us that it's never too late to learn redstone, and by gamifying redstone we can make it more fun and perhaps easier to learn. Cub clearly has a very deep understanding of redstone, which is strange because he chooses not to showcase it very much. When he does, he kind of puts things in the background even though he's doing some really cool things. I mean, in his current base he has this secret door which kind of works using a pot and signal strength. I don't understand it and I'd love him to talk us through it. However, this shows us that his redstone ability is kind of above the basic person like myself. Because of this, he's able to develop really cool experiences within game. Basketball last season placed a lot less emphasis on how he made the build and rather on what the experience actually is. Because of this, he shows us that redstone is more than just a game mechanic, but rather a way to make a game within a game. By placing emphasis on what he can create with redstone rather than how he creates it, he shows us the infinite possibilities of redstone as a mechanic, which is really cool. However, all of these creators kind of pale in comparison to Tango Tech when it comes to gamifying redstone. Now, in the past, Tango was much more farm focused, building some of the most influential iron farms back in the day, which utilized a scary number of doors. However, more recently he's been using redstone to create the most insane thing ever. What is that thing, I hear you ask? Well, it's Decked Out. Decked Out is incredible. In fact, I am constantly in awe of just how insane Decked Out is. I mean, take a look at Decked Out 3, which isn't even built yet. The use of multiple chunk loaders to keep the game going is a really cool and interesting feat in redstone technology, and I'm really excited to see where the project goes. By disguising intense redstone projects behind interesting game mechanics, he's able to create an experience that doesn't really feel like redstone, but rather more like a game. Just take a look at Hungry Hermits from last season, in particular the queuing system he used to load the Hermits in. It was very complex and used a lot of background redstone. However, to the average player, you just see a Hermit drop in and that's it. By disguising the lengthy redstone that goes behind these builds, he really allows us to immerse ourselves into his games, showing that redstone can be both complicated and incredibly simple all at once. As time has gone on, he's really found his stride. By coupling his pre-existing understanding of redstone with his love for game design, he's been able to make redstone a creative project. Again, this shows us how core mechanics can really help you develop your redstone beyond the basics, and even create whole games within a game. Whilst I don't expect any of you to be making your own Decked Out anytime soon, if you want to be like Tango, use redstone to create games in the game, because that's one way to make it a lot more interesting for yourself. These hermits use redstone to bring their builds to life. Now, I know that buildstone has become quite popular on the server as of late, however I think there's only one hermit that really fits into this category, and that is Mumbo Jumbo. Mumbo has had quite an interesting evolution of his use of redstone as time has gone on. Originally he was focused on creating things like redstone doors, and later worked with flying machines to create animated contraptions. However, with the development of buildstone technology in recent years due to the innovation led by Jake Kelton Crafts, Mumbo's use of redstone has switched almost entirely to buildstone. This comes pretty much from his basic understanding of redstone. By knowing the game's core mechanics, he's able to make really insane animations that bring his builds to life. I mean, this season he's made fans, he's made windmills, he's even made geese that fly above his base. But this is really cool because it takes Minecraft from a still, kind of static feeling game to something that feels lived in and often alive. Life has always been a really big part of redstone for Mumbo. I mean, look look at Grumble. By using animation, he's always given the game that extra level of charm, which I really love. Part of how he's got to this level is his experimentation. By making constant variations of the same build, he's able to find the perfect way of doing something. He's always up for refining and changing his builds to make them just that little bit better, which is really inspiring. So if you want to be like Mumbo, you need to focus on bringing your builds to life. I would recommend watching a lot of his Redstone videos, because whilst he doesn't 100% talk us through the mechanics, you can definitely do some secondhand learning through his builds. No one will probably ever be able to match Mumbo's skill in this area, but I reckon if you put the effort in, you could definitely get there. Just a quick editor's note, this next section was made around 5 months ago when I didn't have much YouTube experience at all, so forgive some of the weirdnesses is the best thing I can say. Anyway, enjoy it. Hermitcraft Season 10 was, unsurprisingly, full of hermits who have worked tirelessly to create their own pieces of YouTube art. Whilst these hermits all have worked incredibly hard to upload not just entertaining but productive videos, some have certainly performed better than others. And that is why we're here, to figure out who was the best hermit in Hermitcraft Season 10.
Not a thong, it's very comfortable.
In last place we have Iskall. I debated whether it was even worth putting Iskall and another hermit on this list, but for the sake of ranking every Season 10 hermit, he's here. Anyway, that's enough said. He loses for obvious reasons. In second to last, we have Stress Monster. Now, while Stress made a strong start in the season's beginning, with the creation of her Hermitcraft through Time base, her departure alongside Iskall early on in the season makes it very difficult to actually judge her impact on the season as a whole. Well, that and the fact that she deleted all of her videos a few weeks after quitting.
Okay, so where's the food at?
Hypno started this season strong. His base, which was combined with Wells Knight's Fire and Underground Tunnel, had an older Minecraft charm to it that you rarely find in most modern SMPs. This, paired with his experimentation with music discs and shulker farms, laid the framework for a really strong season. However, it was also clear from the beginning that his season lacked direction. This, alongside his preference for modded Minecraft, led him to stop uploading episodes very early on in the season, a common trend for Hypno, who took mid-season breaks during both Season 7 and Season 9 of Hermitcraft. In short, what Hypno produced during Season 10 was really strong, and I totally understand that a myriad of personal issues can prevent the Hermits from uploading. So of course, no shade to Hypno for choosing to exit the season early on. What he did was good. But again, it's hard to rank a Hermit season when they only upload a small numbers of episodes, so into 25th Hypno goes.
It will burn.
Wells Knight was another hermit whose uploads were somewhat stunted due to personal issues. I really urge you all to watch episode 29 of his season, as he explains this in a really detailed way and in far more depth than I could ever go into. That being said, Wells still made a big impact on the server when he did find the chance to upload. Centering his season around a large medieval castle, Wells created his own unique take on a more traditional concept. This, coupled with his authentic presentation and honesty with his viewers, elevated his work from your average Hermitcraft season to something unique and special. A very valuable asset in the repetitive world of endless 100 days videos. However, again, like Hypno, Wells' lack of uploads meant that his progress through the season was kind of lackluster, making it hard for me to justify placing him any higher on the list. That being said, Wells should be very proud of his work this season, and again, I really encourage you guys to watch his episodes and educate yourself on his personal struggles, because they're incredibly relevant to his absence this season.
Sheep! Is that sheep looking at me?
Zedath is by far the most unique hermit on the server, using his own creative mind to come up with strange and wacky concepts that most of us couldn't create if we tried. This is abundantly clear throughout his base, with a furnace that is powered by kinetic energy and pistons, a brewing machine that works on DDR mechanics, and an army of floating chicken jockey villagers, or as I call them, chillagers. And who can forget Is That Sheep Looking at Me, Zedath's homegrown game show that involved multiple collaborations with other hermits this season. Zed truly knows his niche, and he sticks to that niche, rarely pushing himself out into the wider lore of the server or attempting large-scale projects like a mega base. Now, whilst of course it is good for a hermit to know their niche, as the season went on it became clear that Zed was exhausting his wacky ideas and concepts, and as a result of that his upload slowed. Whilst I would love to put Zed higher up on the list, I feel that his season lacked the multi-dimensionality of other hermits, and so it's into 23rd with him.
I'm gonna force feed you seeds until you love me.
Now, this is most definitely a controversial pick. Trust me, I love Green as much as the next person, but I can't help but feel that since Season 9, Green's Hermitcraft episodes have felt somewhat directionless. When I say directionless, I mean in terms of Minecraft's two core mechanics, redstone and building. Whilst of course you can't expect every hermit to master both, Green has put both of these aspects on the back burner this season, creating a base that, whilst aesthetically pleasing, is presented as more of a chore than a creation that G is truly proud of. This being said, in terms of lore, once again Green has blown it out of the water. He started the season out strong with his Fisherman arc, where his grind for the Mending book was both charming and engaging. He then built on this strength with a Permit arc, a storyline that truly would not have been what it was without his direction and dedication to the plot. However, kinda like Zedaf, this dedication to one aspect of the game means that, as the season progressed and plot points became resolved, it became more and more evident that the core aspects of Green's season lack direction. Again, please don't hate me. This is just my opinion as someone who isn't all that bothered about lore. I am sure that Green's season was far more satisfying for you lore lovers out there. Season 10 marks the season where Beef became a dad, so bonus points to Beef for putting his child first and letting this season go somewhat on the back burner. Go you, Beef. That being said, like most people low down on this list, he's kind of here purely because I don't have much to judge his season by. Don't get me wrong, he started the season off strong with the start of the Big Salmon plotline, which, in my opinion at least, could have gone even further than it did. His base, while smaller than most hermits, had a charm that comes almost entirely from the fact that Beef knows what it's like to live on a farm. As a result of this, we got to see some really sweet and detailed additions to the base, like a barn cat based off Beef's own personal cat. Unlike other hermits, Beef was aware of the upcoming personal events that would go on to truncate his season, something that makes itself so clear in the smaller scale of his base, which felt quite complete early on in the season. Again, Beef will be higher on this list, but I have to be objective and acknowledge that, whilst he had a good season, it would have been better if he was more active.
I'm calling you out.
Joe Hills is slept on. I feel like we don't give this guy the appreciation he truly deserves. Throughout the season, Joe has had semi-consistent uploads, focusing mostly on his Hermit Homedale project, which aimed to encourage the entire server to take up and fill plots with their own builds. Fitted with an in-game representation of New Jersey's famous Bell Labs, a detailed library system and an in-game museum that rivals Cubfan's Season 9 museum, Joe's base quickly became a hotspot for other Hermits builds, such as the Labyrinth. His characters, Joe Hills, the Puppet and Beetlejuice, are all charming and funny, adding their own weird bits of lore to the series that have given it typical Joe strangeness. Now you guys must be thinking, if I'm praising Joe so highly, why is he so far down on the list? To you I say, because Joe Hills is slept on. His base, whilst amazing and high in concept, was not used by the Hermits as much as it should have been. His lore, whilst fun, often didn't intertwine with the other Hermits because his base was so far off from everyone else's. As a result of this, Joe's season feels somewhat lackluster in comparison to other Hermits who didn't rely on other support to complete their base. That being said, Hermitcraft is full of incredible creators, all of whom have had seasons that, like Joe's, deserve all the praise and support they can get.
Hey guys, it's Keralis.
Keralis is Hermitcraft's Icarus. His start to the season was incredible, so incredible in fact that he practically flew straight through the sun, leaving him singed and burnt out for the majority of Season 10. This being said, wow, what a season Keralis. His large tropical base puts any talented builder to shame, with its blend of complicated and detailed trees, gorgeously terraformed coastlines, and an even more charming cable car that enhances its vacation vibe. I think that both Keralis' viewers and the other Hermits were astounded by his work early on in the season. Keralis is an example of innate skill. It is clear through his base that when Papa K has a vision, he puts it into fruition. Take his more recent creation of the Polar Fortress near XB's base for example. Its beauty is both overwhelming and effortless, a talent which I truly do admire. And yet, due to his Icarus-like nature, the time Keralis took away from the Hermitcraft server this season feels all the more impactful, as whilst we saw the work he could complete in a few months, imagine what else he could have created if he had just stayed more committed to the series. But of course, Keralis is human and should do what he enjoys most, so if that's building an awe-inspiring base and then taking some time off, so be it.
You not hear my calls for help?
Etho. They call you washed, but I argue you are still in your prime. Kind of. Don't get me wrong, Etho's strange upload schedule makes his season feel a bit lackluster. The actual content that makes it into Etho's videos, compared to how frequently he appears in other Hermits videos / live streams, makes Season 10 seem like a pretty average season for Etho. And in some ways, it has been. His base, whilst quaint and not too overdone, is dwarfed by his neighbours Cubfan and Tango. However, the impression Tango has made on Season 10 is undeniable. Ravager Rush, his rendition of the popular game Frogger, captivated the Hermits with its clever mechanics and frequently changing arenas. The mail system, whilst underutilised in the later stages of the season, connected the Hermits in a way that had never been done before. However, Etho does feel like a bit of an onlooker at times. He has this sort of lovable passivity that makes him perfect for featuring in others' videos, rather than spearheading his own 80+ episode season. All in all, Season 10 has been pretty decent for Etho. Not too bad at all.
Boner.
Season 10 marked the season where Doc stayed truest to his roots. Dialing back the scale from the huge perimeter he built in Season 9, Doc really focused on abusing the niche technical aspects of the game to create some really cool and quirky contraptions. My personal favourite being the Enderpearl teleportation network that he used to get across the server. It still amazes me to this day. However, it would be wrong to say that Doc completely abandoned big building projects as a whole. His large hourglass in the centre of the shopping district really set the standard for what a good permit-abiding shop should look like. This, paired with his constant engagement of the community through his use of fan art thumbnails, lands Doc in a respectable place towards the middle of the pack.
I can take a piss in your mouth.
Skiz is honestly the best addition to Hermitcraft since Grian's entry in Season 6. Not only does he capture the charm and authenticity of early Let's Play style videos, his fresh and inexperienced perspective provides a point of view that I didn't realise Hermitcraft was lacking until he joined the server this season. Yet, despite the silly and wacky caricature that Skizzleman can often be, his season has still centred around something real and mature, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Creating a large pyramid structure based off the 4 core layers of Maslow's theory, Skiz managed to blend real issues, such as mortality, with his signature comedic style. This, coupled with the comic relief he provided throughout the Permit storyline, has cemented Skiz as a dimensional, not just member, but pillar of the server. Well done, Skiz.
Nothing but W's over here.
Gemini Tay is a hermit who I admittedly have not had much experience with. I'm not sure why, but I never gravitated towards her content. But looking back at Season 10, boy do I wish I subscribed to her channel earlier. Taking inspiration from the popular video game Dredge, Gem created a base that blended elements of brutalism, fantasy and the nautical, culminating in a beautifully eclectic seaside village. By then pairing this with her sweet but chaotic delivery and constant attention to detail, such as the creepy pop-out pumpkins that she installed to celebrate Halloween, Gem has finally convinced me that she is a hermit that I most definitely have overlooked. My one small complaint is that I would love to have seen more of Gem in other hermits videos. While she collaborated with members of Magic Mountain, I would have loved to see her spend some time with the neighbourhood crew. But honestly, Gem, I'm sorry I didn't subscribe to you. Tango certainly had his work cut out for him this season, having created the absolutely genius game Decked Out 2 in Season 9. It's safe to say that Tango would have had to put in a lot of work to top something that will truly go down in Hermitcraft history. Whilst Tango arguably didn't create anything with the same awe-inspiring magic as Decked Out 2, I feel like that was almost the point of Tango's Season 10, to accept that Decked Out was a grind and take a breather. That being said, Season 10 was still a really good season for Tango. Focusing on the recent implementation of autocrafters, Tango created a giant redstone factory that displayed both his talents in building and in redstone. And then who can forget Hungry Hermits, the game that captivated the Hermits all season long. Taking inspiration from fast-paced games such as Overcooked and Place Up, Tango perfectly translated the chaotic energy of the kitchen sim genre into a wondrously blocky format. When doing Skiz's Pyramid, Tango admitted himself that making games is the reason he is on this earth, and I believe that Season 10 proves that point. Tango is a true entertainer and engineer, something that I most definitely am grateful for.
I'm gonna be the tromboner.
Season 10, much like Season 9, saw Impulse set himself yet another huge goal, the creation of a fully fledged cyberpunk city. Now, whilst Impulse may have set his sights too high by aiming to construct multiple games alongside this city, the sheer amount of effort he put into trying to achieve this goal has most definitely earned him this spot on the list. I think this is truly highlighted in the fact that I'm even struggling to pick out just one aspect of Impulse's season to focus on during his segment. Do I talk about Metro Mayhem and the fact that not only is the game a celebration of Hermitcraft 10's previous seasons, but it is also a true feat in game creation that blends both fast-paced action with clever parkour and shortcuts? Or do I discuss the multiple high-rise buildings that he and B-Dubs built in the cyberpunk city throughout the season? I honestly can't choose just one, so I will just say this. Impulse is an incredibly dedicated individual, and Season 10 illustrates that perfectly. Good job, dude. Good job.
Started my fitness routine with Pokemon Go 2.
Zoomovoid, my favourite middle-aged, absolutely jacked punk rocker who simultaneously acts as the admin for one of the most popular Minecraft series on YouTube. X is truly a jack of all trades, and I think that Hermitcraft Season 10 really highlights this. His base, while smaller than others, is unique and well designed, blending elements of redstone and interior design to create its own little homestead. And then there's Loglands, a two-man project turned one-man in which Exuma created a farm for pretty much every natural resource in the game. However, both these aspects of his season are nothing in comparison to what he has done for the community in preparation for the world download. Not only has X created a large map for the entire server, with the giant map art icon of the season's logo, he has also used the server's Armor Sand mod to build murals which track the key statistics from across the season. And yet, all of this is nothing compared to Hermitcraft's greatest community project yet, the Hermitcraft Art Museum. In this museum, Exuma and the other hermits have gathered a collection of amazing pieces of art, a curation which acts as a celebration for the wonderful community that has formed around the server. This project wouldn't have happened without Exuma, so thank you Exuma. The server is truly lucky to have an admin like you.
Sounds a bit kinky.
Cleo is probably the most supportive member of Hermitcraft. Not only have they supported their fellow hermits, but they have also, as an ex-teacher, supported the education of hundreds of children. This level of supportiveness has been made abundantly clear throughout Season 10, with Cleo constantly offering their armor stand services to the hermits, creating honest works of art such as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Impulse's Metro Mayhem. This armor stand magic, as the hermits often call it, is truly Cleo's greatest and most unique strength, something evident in their base, which incorporates the armor stand mod to elevate the magical atmosphere of Cleo's mythical mining town. This, coupled with the looming threat of the village's monster, which looks absolutely amazing by the way, makes Cleo's base both engaging and most importantly unique. That novelty is, in part, why Cleo is so high up on this list. They truly create a unique viewing experience which, at least in my opinion, has made Cleo's Season 10 enjoyable to watch.
I'd probably say Obama. I met Obama.
Coming in 10th, we have Cubfan, the king of consistency. Cub, unlike many YouTubers, treats his job as just that, a job. As a result of this, Cub is constantly grinding to produce regular uploads that are both engaging and include a relative amount of progress. This is perhaps most obvious in his huge sculk-censored base. Whilst massive in scale, it is still littered with detail and, most importantly, diamonds. Diamonds which, without the copious amounts of grinding that Cub was willing to put in, would have been lapis for a lesser YouTuber such as myself. However, Cub's grinding does not stop there. Not only did Cub pioneer the use of permits through the creation of his fireworks shop, but he was also central to the Popo storyline, taking on the role of Chief Permit Officer. The way in which Cub stood up to the plate here really shows the true strength of Cub's season. He is dependable and deserves more credit than he gets. Good job, Cub. Jevin, like Joe, is definitely deserving of far more popularity than he has, and Season 10 has made that more clear than ever. Wow, what a season, Jev. Not only has Jevin built a sprawling fantasy forest, but the latter half of his season saw his focus shift to the construction of a giant castle overlooking this forest. The constant expansion of his base acting as a testament to his determination to do more and create more. However, where Jev truly shined this season is in the lore that he contributed to the Permit Office storyline. As leader of Nopo, Joe created a much needed dramatic tension between the Hermits, a tension which gave the whole Permit storyline a lot more direction. I am truly lost for words at how well Jev has done this season. Not only has he fought through some extremely difficult and expensive personal issues, but he has published what is, in my opinion, his best season yet. Wow. Honestly, wow.
And I am on the Geomine server, which is...
False Symmetry Season 10 is the perfect example of knowing your limits. Of course, False has taken on some huge projects, but her base grew in stages as the season went on, and in doing this, False made sure not to overextend herself. By growing her base from a small circle of houses to a large building with a stunning tree looming above, and finally to a terraform blend of rustic and sci-fi, False has avoided something that plagues most hermits: fatigue. By not aiming so high, False was able to focus on not just her base, but also the nearby rivers. All in all, False's Season 10 really has no flaws for me. It may not be as perfect as the ones higher on the list, but she did a pretty good job.
Can you show me your butt, please, kiddies? Can you please turn around?
In at number 7, we have Rendog and his Gigacorp Colony HC-10. Ren's season was the perfect blend between lore, progress, and general shenanigans, and by this I mean his lore influenced his builds, and his builds opened the window to a number of brilliant shenanigans. Take the Giga Hut for example. After drafting his ideas for the build, Ren had digital blueprints created to reinforce the space colony aesthetic. He then explained why the Giga Hut was necessary for his survival in the fictional HC-10, and then, and only then, did he properly construct the build. This is the magic of Rendog, and particularly Rendog this season. He effortlessly made lore a reality. Another example, his shops in the shopping district. Their style remained consistent with the season's lore because Rendog respects the logic of lore, and that is what makes Rendog special.
Honey, 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 must be running in this Minecraft.
This man is honestly just insane. I genuinely believe that in his first season of Hermitcraft, Joel has managed to create a base that rivals any other, both in detail and in scale. Much like Impulse, Joel focused on creating a cyberpunk city, fusing elements of Japanese architecture to construct an absolutely insane mega base. However, unlike any other hermit, Joel seems to have this superpower of both insane creativity and incredible efficiency. The fact that Joel added a new structure to his skyline nearly every episode this season speaks for itself. It is clear that Joel wanted to make one hell of an entrance, and that he definitely did. And then there's his unique way of packaging his videos, intertwining skits with random songs to make every episode not just awe-inspiring but also entertaining.
Honey, 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 must be running in this Minecraft world.
Joel is not just a talented builder but an entertainer too. Two unique traits that have definitely earned him his spot high up on the list.
Dong me right now. Let's go.
Okay, right, okay.
When I watched season 9 of Hermitcraft, particularly Scar's episodes, I saw Scarland and said to myself, how can anyone ever beat the pure magic of that build? I don't know how, but Scar did just that this season. His Scarfari Zoo, situated at the bottom of Magic Mountain, blends elements of wild fantasy and bold naturalism, creating a base that was more than just a base, but rather a feast for the senses. Take the giant redwood trees that Scar placed around his base, for example. By meticulously thinking about light, hue and colour, Scar was able to create a sense of scale and spectacle that no other Hermit has captured this season. And then who can forget the train? Scar ensured that every single car on this train was littered with minute details, and the fruits of that are really shown in the end product, which truly acts as a celebration of Scar's building talents. These builds, however, were merely the exposition for the main event of Scar's Season 10, the Zoo. This zoo not only incorporates the Imagineering magic of Scarland, but its small scale allowed Scar to actually complete the build and fulfill his vision. It's something that I think Scar ought to be really proud of himself for. And then on top of all this, Scar has also brought an unrivaled charm to the lore of this season. Acting as chief of the Popo alongside Skiz, Scar managed to take the storyline from your average piece of lore to a hilariously weird and engaging plot. Damn Scar, you really are good.
This man was just trying to shoot me 2 seconds ago.
Right.
Pearl's efforts this season are pretty much summed up by how often I saw Hermit staring at her base in awe, which unsurprisingly happened very often. Pearl's solar punk town perfectly combined colour, texture and hue, creating a beautifully executed vision that stayed in line with its aesthetic the whole way through. It is clear that Pearl really thought her base out this season, as its many minute details elevate the build from something gorgeous to something truly unique. Take the tunnels that run under her base, for example. Not only were these tunnels useful for Pearl and the other Hermits this season, but they also allowed many parts of Pearl's base to feel connected and interlinked, making its beauty all the more overwhelming. However, where Pearl has really shined this season is in a constant challenging of herself. Pearl is primarily a builder. I think that is more than clear in her aforementioned base. Yet Pearl consistently challenges herself to be more than that. This is epitomised in her technical creation, Purdle, which took the principles of the hit game Wordle and put them into Minecraft. With little to no redstone experience prior to this challenge, Pearl proved to us, the viewer, that if you set your mind to a goal, anything is possible. That is what makes Pearl so special. She is not a quitter or a coaster. She is a worker who constantly strives to make herself better. I have no idea whether placing XB in third is a controversial pick or not. In my opinion, he's the most underrated Hermit on the server. If it was up to me, his videos would be far more popular, and he would get the praise that he truly does deserve. XB Season 10 is the perfect example of why XB is deserving of all the love and praise in the world. Focusing on the conversion of an ocean monument, XB used Season 10 to improve on a past concept from previous seasons, using his new knowledge and understanding of the game to blend both new and old. These sort of challenges often led XB to seek help from other Hermits, such as his collab with B-Dubs on the lower garden area of his base. This could be perceived as a mark of XB's inexperience, but I see it more as a sign of XB's biggest strength. He's not afraid to ask for help and reach out to the other Hermits. Whilst his base was not as close to spawn as others, he still hosted many events, such as the Trident PvP tournament, as well as a massive lawsuit against Mumbo. I love XB, and he did so well this season.
One more run, let's shave some nuggies.
B-Dubs is not just a Hermit, not just a content creator, but he is an artist. B00100 Season 10 was a literal work of art. Every single build he completed had a sense of purpose, it had a reason, and most importantly, it fits into the wider vision of his base. He treats Minecraft as a canvas on which he paints some of the most beautiful and detailed images. Take his forest for example. Not only was that build a massive grind, but it also incorporated reality, with B-Dubs taking inspiration from the trees around his home and implementing that vision into his work. We also can't forget the sheer amount of attention to details B-Dubs puts into his work. The little tricks he uses, like open fence gates to look like birds in the sky, really are genius. And yet what is most unique about this genius is his devotion to his fellow Hermits. All season long, B-Dubs made an effort to help and support the Hermits with their projects, despite his own heavy workload. His work on the Nether Hub was stunning. Without his support, Impulse would have never finished the Cyberpunk city. B-Dubs is not afraid to use his talent to help others, acting as an inspiration to both Hermits and his fans. One of the most inspiring aspects of his work for me personally is the way in which he presents his videos. Once again, B-Dubs would bind art and YouTube in his use of wide establishing shots to set the pace of the video, or as a homage to the courtroom drama in his Tool Claims Court miniseries. So, all I have to say is thank you B-Dubs. Thank you for being my inspiration.
And finally there's Mumbo.
Mumbo has been a prominent member of Hermitcraft for years, having a number of really strong seasons on his belt. However, I truly believe that Season 10 is Mumbo's best season to date. After a difficult time in Season 9 and a long break to figure out some personal issues, Mumbo came to Season 10 with a fresh perspective, a perspective made clear through his constant improvement throughout the season. By treating YouTube as a hobby, opposed to an obligation, Mumbo was able to improve in nearly every facet of the game. In terms of building, he made consistent efforts to elevate his style from stone bricks and iron blocks, challenging himself to use gradients and add minute details in ways that we have never seen done before. This extreme level of detail is what made Mumbo stand out the most for me this season. His creation of unique title cards, build sketches, physical merch and elements of world building such as the Mind Corporation's backstory all made his season feel like more than just your average season of Hermitcraft. And in spite of all this improvement in his building abilities, Mumbo still stayed true to his roots, taking inspiration from his community to pioneer numerous buildstone creations that blended functionality with beauty. Mumbo Season 10 featured all the charm and wit of a typical Hermitcraft season, whilst also introducing bold new ideas that got Mumbo out of his rut and back into the content creation headspace. He should be damn well proud of this season because I know I am. Well done, Mumbo.
I know that cooked chicken, my favorite food too. I love me some chicky tenders, you know what I mean?
People love Hermitcraft. Hell, I love Hermitcraft. People also love the Hermits, however I think there's a real discrepancy in between which Hermits get the love they deserve and which Hermits don't. Don't get me wrong, I totally get why certain members of the server are so popular. The sort of stuff they get up to is honestly incredible. I mean, look at how Mumbo's building has evolved in recent years, it's just amazing. But I believe that all Hermits are born equal, and more importantly that all Hermits deserve your watch time. Now, I'm sure there's an absolute ton of reasons why you, my lovely viewer, haven't stayed up to date with some of the smaller members of Hermitcraft, and that's why I'm here to fill in the blanks. Yes, today I'm going to catch you up on some of those amazing Hermits that you've missed over the years, and explain why they deserve a lot more hype than they actually get. Okay, to start off, I think we've got to make it really clear what I exactly mean by underrated, because, of course, all the Hermits obviously have pretty solid fan bases. While some of the Hermits have dropped in popularity in recent years, everyone has a really good and supportive community around them, a community that I'm honestly proud to be a part of. That being said, when I refer to an underrated Hermit, I'm talking about a Hermit who deserves as many loyal fans as, say, Mumbo. These creators are all committed, hardworking individuals who deserve a lot more love than they actually get. These creators also tend to go against the algorithm, which in part might explain their smaller viewership. You see, a lot of the smaller Hermits have far more candid videos, which I personally love. Instead of filling their videos with snappy cuts and shortened sequences, they let us peek behind the scenes of Hermitcraft and get to know the Hermits on a deeper level. These Hermits all have a similar charm. Their content is almost reminiscent of Minecraft's early days on YouTube. By leaving in extended and less stylized sequences, these Hermits make their content feel real and authentic. And that's why I love these guys. They remind me of the heart and soul of Minecraft YouTube. So, without further ado, let's take a journey into the heart of Hermitcraft, and answer the question, who is the most underrated Hermit?
Hey guys, what's up? It's Jevin. How is everybody doing?
First up, we have Jevin. Now, Jev is the epitome of slept on. I'm sure most people are somewhat acquainted with Jev after his role in the Permit arc last season, but I'm telling you, this man is so much more than just a salmon worshipping outlaw. This dude is talented in so many different aspects of the game, and a major part of that is his constant ambition. He always has some crazy idea that he tirelessly and consistently works towards. In Season 10, Jev not only created an immersive forest base fitted with armor stands and a small village, but he also created a giant castle in the space of just a few short months. That kind of persistence is what I admire most about Jev. He's just so consistent. I mean, during Season 10, this guy went through a car crash and he still continued to upload. Hell, this guy was coughing to the point where he was breaking ribs, and he still made an effort to update his audience. Now, of course, no YouTuber is actually expected to do that. If I'm going to be totally honest, I doubt I do that for you lot. But that makes Jev all the more admirable. He does what others won't. I also love the style of his content and its roots in the early Minecraft YouTube scene. He'll often also post whole videos just highlighting other Hermits' work and showcasing their builds, which just shows how selfless this man is. That being said, Jev also spends a solid amount of his time just chatting with his audience. He acknowledges that his viewers care about him, an attitude that really drives his personal improvement, both in game and in real life. Jev is also just super versatile. Rather than pigeonholing himself to just one aspect of the game, Jev is pretty much up for anything. Whether it be extended lore segments, mega builds, or even the occasional Redstone project, Jev always gives it his all. If I had to compare Jev to another Hermit, it'd probably be Ren or Cubfan. Like Ren, Jev is great at sticking to a theme throughout his season. He's also quite silly and comical like Ren, but maybe just a little bit less lore driven. On the other hand, Jev also has a lot of similarities to Cubfan, particularly in his interactions with other hermits. Both of these hermits perfectly walk the line between having fun and getting work done. So if you're a fan of Cub, I definitely recommend checking out Jev. Plus, Jev is really trying to hit 1 million subscribers this year, so why don't you head over there and give him a subscribe? I'm sure he'd really appreciate it.
Joe.
Next up we have Joe. Joe is entirely underrated. In fact, when I was writing his section in my Hermitcraft Season 10 ranking video, I came up with the idea for this very video you're watching now. You see, I could yap about how underrated Joe is for days, and so here we are, yapping about how underrated Joe is. Hopefully not for days. Anyway, let me give you a little perspective on just how prolific of a Hermitcraft member Joe Hills is. First off, this guy was one of the earliest members of Hermitcraft and one of 2 hermits to appear in every season. With over 2,000 videos on his channel, it's safe to say that Joe is committed to the grind. One of the cool things about Joe is that he's more than just a hermit. In fact, he's one of the very few hermits on the server who consistently makes the content he wants to make. Because of this, Joe has made a ton of really interesting series on his channel. Whilst these videos didn't get a ton of views, he still went out of his way to make them, which just shows how passionately committed he is to the channel. That being said, we are talking about Joe as a member of Hermitcraft, so let's try and get back to talking about his merit as a hermit. Joe is probably the most random hermit. His videos are filled with strange characters and monologues, as well as extended uncut segments where he just sort of chats with the other hermits. This style of content creation creates a really welcoming atmosphere, which just makes his whole channel feel all the more approachable. That approachability also bleeds into the projects that Joe works on. Now, Joe does make some insane mega builds, which honestly I couldn't replicate if I tried. However, by splitting these projects up across multiple videos, Joe makes his builds feel a lot more realistic. The way he talks us through each element of a build gives his work a sense of purpose and reason, which is ironic considering just how random Joe's builds tend to be. Currently, Joe is working on constructing a film studio for the other hermits to film segments in. Last season he destroyed an entire mountain range just to create a replica of the Homedale Labs. What is the connecting thread between these projects, I hear you ask? Well, the hermits. You see, Joe has the very unique ability of always finding some way to get other creators involved with his work. He's always happy to not just uplift his fellow content creators, but also provide them with a bit of space to exercise their creative freedom. This sort of collaborative mindset is what sets Joe apart. He consistently collaborates not just with other hermits, but also with random interesting people. Throughout the years, he's interviewed experts and even charities on his channel, using his platform for the benefit of others. He also uses his platform to bridge that weird parasocial gap between a YouTuber and his audience. By sharing things about his real life on his channel, Joe feels less like a YouTuber and more just like another human on this weird spinning rock we live on. Simply put, Joe is not easily defined. He does a lot and works really hard, making him a clear contender for Hermitcraft's most underrated member. Hypno has had a somewhat rocky experience with Hermitcraft in recent times. He took a pretty big hiatus during Season 10, which meant that, understandably so, his community sort of faded away. And yet, none of that really matters because Hypno's back, and boy is he better than ever. So far this season, Hypno's constructed an absolutely ginormous pyramid, fitted with a state-of-the-art storage system and a worrying amount of cats. Now, I know that sounds like he's done a lot, and it might be too late for you to jump in now, but I guarantee you that now is as good a time as any to get into Hypno's content. You see, Hypno's very good at walking that line between quantity and quality. Well, yeah, he has done a lot of work so far this season. He clearly has a wider vision in mind that is going to take some time to achieve, meaning that whilst the current progress that he's made may be pretty jaw-dropping, we can expect a lot more from him throughout the season. Plus, we also can't forget the merits of Hypno as a content creator. He's a good builder, but he's also just an entertaining guy. His videos often tend to focus more on his work, opposed to his interactions with other hermits. To some extent, this limits Hypno, because he doesn't really feature all that much in other people's videos. However, this also provides the pretty major benefit of giving us more time to get to know and love Hypno. I must admit that I myself am relatively new to his content. I tried watching some of his Season 10 videos, but after he disappeared from the server, it was difficult to stay committed. But then again, me being a bit of a novice to his work means that I can assure you that his community are very approachable. This could possibly be because Hypno's a bit of an icon in Minecraft history, to be honest. His roots stretching back to Season 1 of Hermitcraft ensure that he has a pretty dedicated long-term fan base. On that note, weirdly, I really love Hypno's thumbnails. They're not clickbait, but they're not boring. They're just authentic, like Hypno. Hypno always takes the time in his videos to break the fourth wall and talk to us a bit through his build, which again really enhances that authenticity. Basically, if you want to watch someone who feels real, check Hypno out because he's as authentic as you can get.
Hey everybody, Vintage Beef here.
Beef is probably the most contentious member on this list because, well, he's done a lot during his time on YouTube. As an influential member of both Minecraft and Hermitcraft, Beef has certainly earned his 1.5 million subscribers. However, I feel like his audience has sort of disappeared as Beef has begun to upload less often. Ironically, in Season 10, when Beef had to spend less time on the server and more time with his son, I started to love his stuff more than ever. I think a big part of that is how calm and relaxing Beef's style of presentation is. I just love how his videos aren't focused on getting a ton of work done. They feel more like an update with how Beef's getting on as he talks us through the work that he's doing. Now, I do recognise the irony of saying all this when he currently is on a bit of a break. However, I hope that once things have settled down a bit in Beef's personal life, he'll be back to uploading. But hey, even if he doesn't, this guy's got well over a decade of content in his backlog, which is just as good as some of his new stuff. I mean, just look at how much he's done for Hermitcraft through the creation of TCG. The fact that this guy went to the effort and committed to the grind of creating a whole ass game that both us and the Hermits can play is really admirable. And then there's the multitudes of different series he's created. In the last year alone, Beef has made videos on the Minecraft server, his own Skyblock server, as well as a slew of other interesting side projects. I feel like if you watch Beef, you'll find it very easy to like Beef as a content creator and not just a hermit. I personally love binge watching all his videos on the Beef Plays channel, even though that channel has literally nothing to do with Hermitcraft. That being said, Beef is also a really great hermit. His build style, which I've talked about at length in a previous video, is really unique. He's also really well connected with the other hermits on the server. Given his long history of YouTube, it's not a surprise that he gets on with pretty much everyone. Because of this, Beef could collab with pretty much anyone on the server, which is great if you're like me and love seeing the hermits cross paths. Essentially, Beef is a hermit that I love beyond Hermitcraft. He's cool, chill, and most importantly, open-minded to new projects, so if that's your vibe, check him out, because he's really great.
I really think you should kick Wells Knight off that server.
Why?
Wells is probably the most candid hermit out there. By candid, I mean that he's always open and honest with his audience. I think a perfect example of this is the video uploaded last season where he explains his struggles with ADHD. I really admire the way that he openly discussed his real life issues with his audience in that video, and ever since I've been hooked on his content. This sort of candidness has also bled into his other videos. He often lets his clips sort of linger on as he chats away about his builds, rather than scripting sequences to describe what he's been up to. On that note, Wells is also just such a damn good builder. I cannot understate how talented Wells is. I mean, just look at his current base, it's beautiful. The way he uses shape and colour in his Japanese castle this season is so good. Watch my other videos. Anyway, Wells is also just such a nice guy. If you look at the start of his current season, you can see that. Not only did this guy build the Ender, but he also set up a whole end hub for the Hermits. He's a great team player, which is also really admirable. I feel like when Wells took a bit of a break from the server, it could have been really easy for him to distance himself from the other Hermits, but he's really done the opposite. He spent a lot of this season winding up Gem, which is really funny. I also love how he dedicates whole videos to the most random of things. He somehow makes a video about digging a hole interesting, and if that's not talent, I don't really know what is. I think it's the way he talks us through his content. Rather than just skipping to the end product and ignoring the whole process, Wells takes the time after building something to explain his thought process. I really appreciate that kind of thing because it makes his stuff feel doable. That's why I love Wells. He's considerate and kind. He doesn't just do things for him, he does them for the Hermits and his audience too. So hey, if you're ever wondering which guy made that massive Japanese castle that looms over season 11, check out Wells, and honestly, he'll probably teach you a thing or two.
Oh yeah, it's FedXP.
I cannot help but feel incredibly proud to be a fan of XB. This guy, man, I mean this guy. XB hasn't had the easiest life. His interview on the Imp and Skids podcast taught me a lot, but what I learnt most from hearing XB talk about his difficult childhood is that it doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is what you become. XB has become one of the kindest not just hermits, but also content creators out there. I mean, just look at the way he's been supporting the others as FedXB this season. It honestly blows me away just how thoughtful he can be. We also have to acknowledge that XB is really pushing himself this season. He's spoken before about his struggles with social anxiety, and I think it's just wonderful how he's been pushing himself to come out of his shell. Beyond that, XB is also just super talented. Season after season, this guy creates some of the most awe-inspiring builds and mega projects. And yet, XB's builds never feel like a mega project. XB has this amazing way of making giant builds seem feasible. A big part of that skill is how he regularly uploads videos. Rather than focusing on getting tons of work done just in one video, XB shows the grind and smaller projects that go into creating the large-scale projects. Because of this, when I watch XB, I feel like if I tried, I could definitely create a build inspired by his work. I think part of that also comes from the organic flow of his videos. You see, a typical XB video doesn't have the typical structure of slowly developing a project across an episode. Instead, XB will just let his videos flow freely. 1 minute we might be getting a clip of him yapping with Corrales, and then the next he cuts to a time lapse of him digging a massive hole. This kind of unpredictability makes every single one of XB's videos a treat. As I write the script, I hope that the words I'm saying are slowly becoming more and more relevant. You see, so far in season 11, XB has really hit his stride in terms of viewership, and I would love to see his channel continue to grow. If anyone deserves success, it's XB, so, you know, maybe check his channel out, it's great, I promise. So I guess that brings us to the question, who is the most underrated member of Hermitcraft? Could it be Joe Hills and his cast of weird, kind of strange characters? Is it Jevon and his constant dedication to the grind? Or should it be Hypno and his interesting approach to the game? And then there's Vintage Beef, who's shown us for years now that he's solidly underrated. Or Wells, who shows us what authenticity really means. Well, despite the fact that these hermits are absolutely solidly underrated, I would argue the most underrated hermit is definitely XB Crafted. To me, XB encapsulates everything that makes Hermitcraft great. He's fearless and he's hardworking, but he's also down to earth and authentic. He's also just an incredible builder who makes things that honestly blow me away. But what I think we can learn most from XB is that being a hermit doesn't involve being entirely social. I think it's amazing how he's pushing himself this season to try and come out of his shell, but I also think it's amazing that he's managed to gain this audience while still struggling with social anxiety. I love that since the beginning of his channel he's pushed himself to do things that he doesn't really want to do but knows he should. Because of this, he doesn't get lazy, he sticks to it and he works hard, and I think that's something we could really learn from. But then again, this is all just my opinion. You will probably think that people I haven't even talked about in this video are the most underrated hermit. So let me know down below, because I would love to hear your take.
Another distraction. Mumbo's asked me if I want to go explode stuff in the nether. The answer is yes!
Hermitcraft has seen many members come and go over the past decade. With both new and familiar faces joining the server, it is clear that Hermitcraft is a hub for the absolute best of Minecraft YouTubers. Whilst the Hermits have made it clear that unfortunately there won't be any new members in Season 11, let's take a look to the future, a look to Season 12, and ask ourselves the question, who should be Hermitcraft's next member?
I'm in the little word, also known as Marty, and welcome back to the channel.
Simon here, and welcome back to another episode of Truly Bedrock.
Hello, I'm Shovel, and welcome to my channel.
Welcome back to Empires.
Hi everyone, welcome to another video.
Welcome back everyone to the Let's Play. This is Dallas here.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the next episode of New Life.
And welcome back to Empires SMP.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to One Block Skyblock. But it's hardcore. We started out this world building from this tiny...
When meticulously crafting my list of potential Hermitcraft members, I came up with key factors which will help us decide whether our favourite content creators are truly meant for the Hermitcraft server. Now, whilst the term itself seems kind of vague, by scale I mean, can the creator keep up with the insane projects and builds constructed by the Hermits across the server? We've seen time and time again through projects such as Scarland, BOO's Forest, Cubfan's Pyramid, and Decked Out 2 that the Hermits can create some incredible, and most importantly, huge builds. As a result of this, I think it is so important that a new member doesn't get overwhelmed with the incredible work created by the other Hermits, and most significantly, I'll ask the question, can they meet the demand of a modern Minecraft SMP? When I refer to connections, I'm focusing on how interlinked the creator is with the server's pre-existing members. Have they been in an SMP with other members before? Do they know the members personally? Do they realistically have a chance of joining the server? I'll ask these questions so we can try and find an answer. As we know, Hermitcraft has a broad and diverse audience. As the Hermits have grown older, their audience has aged and matured alongside them. As the server has grown in popularity, the audience has changed to a blend of hardcore fans and more casual viewers. As a result of this, we must look at the potential future members of the server and ask, would their audience actually enjoy their Hermitcraft content? In a world of 100 days videos and constant clickbait thumbnails, I think that it is vital that any future member of Hermitcraft can match the raw realism maintained by the other Hermits. This could be through their connection to their audience, their long-term history of content creation, or even through the online persona that they present to their audience. What matters most is that they make their viewers feel appreciated, something which current Hermits do an amazing job at.
And we're going to get you, Scott. We're going to take you down.
Uploading his first video in 2013, Solidarity Gaming, or Jimmy as he's known by the other Hermits, is a well-known face in the Minecraft YouTube space. With his channel having over 1 million subscribers, it is clear that Jimmy is used to the large audiences that typically watch Hermitcraft content. This perfectly reflects itself in his online success, with a number of his videos reaching nearly 2 million views. In terms of scale, Jimmy's a great candidate for Hermitcraft. His bases in the Empire's SMP, whilst not incredibly large, are still impressive, and his appearances in the live series make it obvious that Jimmy can keep up with the other Hermits' upload schedules. However, where Jimmy excels the most is in his connections to the other Hermits. If you ask someone who exclusively watches the live series if Jimmy is a hermit, I'd imagine they'd have to think a second before giving you an answer. Why I hear you scream at your screen? Because Solidarity Gaming is just so interconnected to the Hermitcraft server. Not only has he appeared numerous times in the live series, he has also joined the Hermitcraft server on multiple occasions, such as in the recent World Tour. His appearance during Gamers Outreach live streams felt organic, almost as if he was already a hermit. And who can forget the crossover that happened between Empires and Hermitcraft during Season 9? It is obvious that Jimmy is well connected to the other Hermits. As a result of this, it is also clear that Jimmy's audience are already very used to the Hermits, meaning his entry to the server would almost seem natural to them. The only issue I could see possibly arising is his audience getting restless at the length of the average Hermitcraft series, as, whilst Jimmy's series rarely exceed 10 episodes, most Hermitcraft seasons stretch well over a year in length. That being said, I think the sheer amount of entertainment that Solidarity offers could easily compensate for this. His videos tend to focus on the entertaining interactions he can have with other creators. The life series epitomises this, with the major role he played in the Bad Boy storyline. The entertaining persona that Jimmy adopts in his videos is arguably a key factor of what makes him so authentic. Whilst his style of content may be more sensationalised than the other Hermits, his closeness to the community makes his content not just enjoyable, but relatable. Something which makes Solidarity Gaming an obvious contender for the position of Hermitcraft's next member.
Goes, I started off by chopping a bunch of trees, and then all of a sudden my pond turned into lava and a demon appeared. That being said, we've got...
I must admit, Fwip almost feels like a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. Whilst of course he would be an amazing addition to the server, I also just wanted to take this segment to appreciate just how great Fwip really is. With over 1.8 million subscribers, Fwip has had his fair share of YouTube success. His long-term hardcore series is both entertaining and awe-inspiring, and who can forget how he innovated the Minecraft YouTube space with his 1000 Days movie format. However, what would make Fwip such an excellent addition to the server is his incredible building skills. Fwip, much like Joel, B-Dubs and other builders on the Hermitcraft server, just has this perfect creative eye that epitomises itself in his gorgeous builds. Not only is Fwip an artist in his building, but he can also easily keep up with the scale of the other Hermits. His hardcore world perfectly illustrates this through mega builds such as the giant interdimensional tree. In terms of connections, Fwip has had quite a few interactions with the Hermitcraft server. When he featured as a guest on the Imp and Skiz podcast, it was clear that Fwip has a decent rapport with the Hermits. This is further exemplified in his appearance on other SMPs, such as Misadventures and Empires, where he interacted with members of the server on various occasions. As a result of these crossovers with the Hermits, I would argue that, whilst maybe not as much as Jimmy's, Fwip's audience are well versed in the Hermitcraft server, meaning that his shift to Hermitcraft would not faze his viewers in the slightest. When looking at the entertainment that Fwip's channel offers, the main draw for me is the way in which Fwip engages the audience through building. By using the flashback mod, time-lapses and voiceovers, Fwip captivates us with his detailed expressions of not just what he is building, but why and how. However, he also excels in social interaction, collaborating with multiple members of the Empire's SMP to create a fun and engaging storyline for the server. Now, if I had not listened to his interview on the Imp and Skiz podcast, I would have argued that Fwip is not as authentic as other people on this list. However, the open way in which he discusses his past and future goals in that episode showed to me just how interlinked Fwip's content is with his personal life, and how his experience working in the tech industry influences his work today. I would definitely recommend, if you haven't already, to check out Fwip's content, because his work is seriously good, and I think he would make an amazing addition to the Hermitcraft server. Taking a slight pivot from the more well-known potential candidates for Hermitcraft's next member, I want to spend this section focusing on someone who truly is in their prime, JoJo Solos. JoJo, with her 86,000 subscribers and successful Twitch channel, is a bold, innovative and deeply well-connected Minecraft YouTuber. I would argue that a huge part of her recent success is her ability to network with other creators in the space. She's appeared on Hermitcraft multiple times, such as in the recent World Tour, and in one of Impulse SV's streams, where she provided the inaugural run for Metro Mayhem. And who can forget her multiple appearances in other events, events, such as MCC, where she trained B-Dubs, Etho, Jevin, Impulse, Skiz and Tango for the championship, or her work in Misadventures, where she directly worked alongside Hermits, creating fun and exciting content. In terms of scale, while she may not have created as many large projects as the other Hermits, JoJo certainly has the potential to work on par with them. Her recent terraforming work in Misadventures proves this. However, where JoJo truly excels is in her unique and charming style of content creation. Whilst her videos tend to be a bit more modern than most Hermits due to her use of bold intros which often establish high-scale concepts, the way in which she consistently captivates and engages her audience makes her a perfect addition to the Hermitcraft team. This is further exemplified through her use of streaming to increase her authenticity. By spending time directly interacting and speaking with her audience, she actively engages them in her content, something which many of the other Hermits, particularly Exumavoid, do in their streams. Unlike some of the Hermits, JoJo feels real, as if she is part of the audience, rather than some mystical figure like Etho that we all can't help but fawn over. This fresh perspective could bring a new lease of life to Hermitcraft. Not only would it bring a new level of diversity to the cast, but it would also allow us, the audience, to feel more engaged with the server. That authenticity, that humanness that JoJo infuses into her content, at least in my opinion, is what makes her so special and enjoyable. So I guess the real question is, will the fandom see that too? Do you think she should be the next Hermit? In the Littlewood, or Martin as he's known to many of his fans, is a perfect example of how OG content creators can successfully bring themselves into the modern day. As a member of Yogscast, Martin has been a member of the Minecraft YouTube canon for over 14 years. With close to 3 million subscribers across his channels, it is clear that Martin is not just a key part of YouTube history, but also the current YouTube scene. This is further reflected in his role as a member of a number of Minecraft SMPs, such as the Life series, Misadventures, and the more recent Vampires SMP. Across these servers, Martin was successfully able to create a strong connection with the other Hermits, reading donations out during the Hermitcraft Season 9 charity stream and appearing during Tango's Decked Out 2 event last season. However, where Martin's connections have grown the strongest is through his participation in the Life series, collaborating with the Hermits multiple times in teams like Dogwarts and the Lost Generation. As a result of this, Martin has a very similar audience to most of the Hermits. His history as a YouTube legend places him among the ranks of Etho and other Hermits who typically attract an audience who have grown up alongside them. Furthermore, as a YouTuber who juggles multiple channels at once, In the Littlewood would easily keep up with the workload and scale expected by the other Hermits. Not only would Martin be able to keep up with the workload expected of him by the other Hermits, but he would also be a perfect fit into the series' wider lore. This is reflected in his recent appearance in the Vampires SMP, which has a heavy lore focus. Alongside this, due to the strong rapport he has with many of the Hermits and his knack for creating fun and entertainment content, like some legendary Minecraft music videos, In the Littlewood would seamlessly blend into the chaotic and oftentimes hilarious interactions that we see on the server. Martin is fun, his content is silly, and I think Hermitcraft needs that. This silliness is what makes Martin seem so authentic to his audience. Not only is he leading the way into a new era of Minecraft YouTube, he played a core part in mine and many other viewers' childhood. And most importantly, his content isn't overly edited or clickbait. His thumbnails are clever and artistic. All in all, Martin is just a great candidate, and someone I could easily believe being Hermitcraft's next member.
Welcome everybody to my new series of Redstone creations from my Redstone world.
Silent Whisperer is another creator on this list that is mainly a Bedrock YouTuber. However, I don't think that means he wouldn't be a great addition to the Hermitcraft server. With over 700,000 subscribers and videos reaching over 6 million views, he is clearly a well-respected member of the Minecraft YouTube canon. His redstone tutorials are honestly lifesavers. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times I've made a Silent Whisperer farm in my Bedrock Forever world. His style, I would say, reminds me most of Exumavoid. There are multiple reasons for this, one of which being his unique and often deadpan mode of address, offering a fun level of sarcasm that I think the Hermits would love. Another reason for this comparison is the perfect diversity of Silent's content, uploading both tutorials and update videos alongside numerous SMPs. Silent persistently shows that, much like Exumavoid, he can keep up with the workload expected of the Hermits. He, much like Doc M, can work on insane redstone projects, the scale of which are honestly indescribable. Take Silent Space in Season 6 of Truly Bedrock for example. The way in which Silent blends huge farms with the gimmick of ray tracing shows to us, the viewer, that Silent has what it takes to keep up with the scale and wackiness of the Hermitcraft server. However, these similarities are not the only thing that ties Silent to the pre-existing members of the Hermitcraft server. In fact, he has worked alongside the Hermits on multiple occasions. For example, more recently Silent has played Peak and Tunnel Rats alongside Exumavoid and other content creators. However, Silent also has strong links to the Hermits in his past and future. His current position as mayor on the Minecraft server lines him up for a number of fun interactions with Vintage Beef, and his previous appearance in UHC Captains allowed him to work directly alongside both Doc M and Corrales. His audience, whilst possibly more Bedrock oriented, would absolutely love to see Silent on the server. Furthermore, the fact that he's currently able to balance his redstone tutorials with his work on various SMPs provides his audience with a level of security. We know that he's going to stay consistent even with a big new challenge like Hermitcraft. And yet, what I love most about Silent is how he is both fun and efficient. Throughout his time on various SMPs, he's shown to us that he can have fun, often pranking his server mates on truly bedrock. The large-scale mega projects also show that Silent can juggle the big with the small, the fun with the work. Something which, as I've said before, is vital for the Hermits. Part of Silent's charm comes from the authenticity of his content. The lack of over-stylization in his videos, and his frequent use of longer uncut segments, gives his work a relatable feel, something that makes the Hermits the Hermits. So what do you think? Can a Bedrock creator be a core member of one of the greatest Minecraft SMPs of all time? Or should he just stick to the tutorials? Let me know down in the comments, and if you've made it this far in the video, consider subscribing to help my little channel grow. If you're a fan of Minecraft Bedrock content, you'll probably know who Dallas is. If you don't, I strongly recommend that you check his channel out. Not only is Dallas one of the most creative individuals in the current Minecraft YouTube space, he is also a real and authentic creator who constantly involves his audience in his content. Having just over 450,000 subscribers, Dallas has had his fair share of success online. Whilst his audience are used to his Bedrock content, his more recent entry into the Minecraft SMP makes it impossible for me to understand why Java players wouldn't want to watch his content. He truly is slept on, and I feel that he deserves something big to reward him for his 13 years of hard work. And what better reward is there than the most popular Minecraft SMP currently on YouTube? As I mentioned before, Dallas brings a unique perspective to building that the Hermitcraft server could really use. Whilst I absolutely love the work of the server's builders, Dallas's ability to blend a futuristic sci-fi aesthetic with the more traditional aspects of Minecraft building is something unique to Dallas and Dallas alone. Furthermore, whilst his roots are in Bedrock, he has experience with numerous members of the server, interacting online with iJevon multiple times and featuring alongside Vintage Beef in the new season of the Minecraft SMP. I mean, even the fact that he and Jevon are both slimes is just perfect. The lore writes itself. When looking at the issue of scale, I have no doubts that Dallas would be able to keep up with the other Hermits. His long-term survival world has racked up over 650 episodes, proving not just his dedication to YouTube, but also his ability to commit to large-scale mega projects. Dallas is dedicated, and his audience knows that. This is reflected in the constant donations and comments that it receives from us, donations which Dallas is eternally grateful for. The level of humility that Dallas shows in his acceptance of these donations illustrates what is, in my opinion, the greatest characteristic of a Hermit. Gratitude. The Hermits constantly show the love and thankfulness that they have for their audiences, and yet Dallas' addition to the server would set a whole new standard for humility. Furthermore, this humility is what makes Dallas so damn authentic. He frequently talks in his videos about his financial struggles and personal life, reminding the viewer that he is a real person with real struggles, and in doing this, he shows us that we aren't alone in our struggles. Whilst Dallas is arguably of a lower energy than the other Hermits, he is still able to create constantly engaging and entertaining content, particularly through the lore that he extends across his series, such as that of the Slime Science Center. Alongside this, the Minecraft SMP has proved to me that Dallas has what it takes to play a major part in a large-scale SMP, such as Hermitcraft. When I look at the 5 criteria that I set out at the start of this video, I can't think of one that Dallas doesn't meet. He's authentic, experienced, entertaining, and his audience would most definitely love to see him on the server. Come on, Hermits, give Dallas a chance.
I knew you were a furry.
Shovel is another YouTuber on this list that played a core part in my childhood. Throughout her time on YouTube, she's been a part of an insane amount of SMPs, such as Harmony Hollow, Empires, The Avenue, Minecraft SOS, Misadventures, Vampires, and yet, throughout all this time, she has remained fun, entertaining, and true to herself. For me, growing up, I loved Harmony Hollow and The Avenue. Seeing the bond that she still has with H-Bomb to this day illustrates, in my opinion, Shovel's intense loyalty to the people she loves. She is, however, not only a prolific member of numerous SMPs, but also a great builder. Her work on the Undergrove and Evermore Empires during Season 1 and Season 2 showed to us the unique and adorable perspective that Shelby brings to building. Furthermore, like many Hermits, she is highly experienced in long-term content creation. With well over 1,000 videos and consistent weekly uploads, it is clear that Shovel could easily keep up with the workload expected of her on the Hermitcraft server. In terms of connections, Shovel has worked with the Hermits on multiple occasions. More recently, she was part of Misadventures alongside Gemini Tay, Pearl, Rendog, Joel, and Cleo. However, her connections don't stop there, as she was directly involved with the Hermits during the Season 9 Empires crossover. And who can forget her audience? Whilst they are possibly more lore focused than that of the other people on this list, I still believe that they would absolutely love to see what she could do in Hermitcraft. In fact, I would argue that the loyalty she extends to her fellow creators is extended back to her by her audience, as they have grown up alongside Shelby over the past decade. Furthermore, given her history, it is obvious that her audience have an appetite for SMPs, and what better way to quench that thirst than with an SMP as prolific as Hermitcraft. And yet, while Shovel is highly entertaining and very well connected to the Hermits, what makes her a perfect candidate for the server is her honesty and openness with her viewers. Having gone through some difficult and quite public issues over the course of her career, Shovel has shown her audience that she is a real and authentic person. This authenticity is further extended through her use of facecam and stream highlights in her videos, as it allows us, the audience, to directly connect with Shelby at a deeper level. As a consequence of this, I think Shubble would deal with the Hermitcraft fandom in a unique and special way that other Hermits might not. Which leaves me wondering, why isn't Shubble already a member of the Hermitcraft SMP? How much longer are we going to have to wait to see Shubble get the recognition that she truly deserves? Mythical Sausage, despite his hilariously silly name, is a face that I think the Minecraft YouTube scene ought to give more recognition to. Of course, he is undoubtedly popular, with over 1 million subscribers and multiple videos surpassing 2 million views. It is clear that he is loved by his audience. However, what I think everyone is missing when they look at Sausage is how well-rounded a creator he is. Like most Hermits, he has played on numerous SMPs, such as Empires, Misadventures, and Vampires. In these series, Sausage has time and time again showed to his peers that he is a committed and skilled individual. Publishing over 50 videos during his time on the Empires SMP, he created a number of gorgeous and awe-inspiring builds. Through these builds, it is clear that he can obviously keep up with the scale and demand of the Hermitcraft server. Furthermore, the time he has spent on these SMPs has built him numerous connections within the Hermits, something made clear through his recent appearance on the Hermitcraft World Tour. As a result of this, his audience are well used to the Hermits and their style. Alongside this, his experience as a storyteller through the lore of his series, such as his role as the King in the Empire's SMP, makes it so that he's not only a perfect possible addition to the Hermitcraft lore, but also ensures that his audience would love the lore opportunities presented to him by this server. In terms of entertainment, Sausage is a highly entertaining individual. He is both silly and serious, fun and hardworking, traits which are exhibited by almost all of the Hermits. He excels in interaction. It is clear that he has a strong rapport with other creators, which would, once again, make it easy for him to fit in with the server. All in all, Mythical Sausage ticks all of the boxes. He is talented, funny, engaging, experienced, and most importantly, well versed in the world of Hermitcraft. He's a unique and interesting creator who would fit in well with the other Hermits. All that we can do now is hope that they feel the same way.
Because I love you lots and lots and lots.
There it is.
Smager is another person on this list that just makes you think, how are they not already a Hermit? With close to 1.5 million subscribers, Scott has shown to his audience that he has what it takes to be a successful content creator. Having created videos with a variety of other YouTubers, such as the likes of Dream, Smager has shown us time and time again that he is adaptable and versatile. This versatility is arguably what makes Scott such a perfect potential member of Hermitcraft. Whilst he's often quite laid back, focusing on the social aspects of the game opposed to large-scale projects, he has also shown to his audience that he can work on large-scale projects, such as the Life series. Furthermore, his role as co-director of MCC shows us that Scott can delegate and organise, a quality seen in many successful Hermits such as Grian. This ability to lead also perfectly intersects with the current expansion that Hermitcraft is undergoing. With a move into large-scale in-person events, such as TwitchCon and Gamers Outreach, the server needs someone strong to lead them into the future, and I believe Smager is the man for the job. In terms of connections, I feel like I don't really even need to discuss it. It's clear that he is close with the Hermits, appearing in a number of major SMPs and joining the server during the Empire's crossover. As I've said before, Scott already feels like a Hermit, and I think that there are many factors that go into that feeling, far more than the fact that he's just close with the Hermits. He has the same entertaining charm as the other Hermits. His extended rivalry with Joel always makes for a good laugh, and the unique perspective that he offered as a member of the Cabin Call group in the most recent Life series makes him really stand out. Alongside this, Smager also has a very similar audience to the Hermits, however he also reaches new and vitally important demographics. His advocacy for LGBTQIA+ rights makes his platform very inclusive, meaning he appeals to all-minded people who would love Hermitcraft. This level of inclusivity is just one example of how Smager is not just like a Hermit, but also holds the same values and care for quality as the Hermits. He sums it up himself quite well in his channel description, where he writes, "I'd rather not upload than upload forced content." Here, Smager makes it clear that what he cares about the most is the quality and authenticity of his content, something which I see as a core value of the Hermitcraft server. Honestly, I just love Scott's content and what he does for the community. I would love to see him get the praise he truly deserves, and that could possibly come in the form of an invite to the Hermitcraft server. Wow, me from 4 months ago was definitely onto something. Despite the fact that I sound like a brain-dead vampire through most of that last section, old me definitely made some good points. This video has been in the works for a while, and if I'm going to be honest, I'm really proud of what I've managed to create. It's been such an experience to look back at the last 6 months of my work and see how the quality of my content has really progressed. I know I've definitely changed in that time, and I'm sure that my channel will continue to change, but I honestly couldn't be any more thankful for my 2,000 wonderful subscribers who have stuck with me whilst I've ranted on and on about Hermitcraft for the last few months. Anyway, that reminds me of the actual point of this video. What makes Hermitcraft so special? Over the course of the last 2 hours, we've explored so many different facets of the server's success. Sure, Hermitcraft is full of amazing builders and talented redstoners. And yeah, the server's future looks pretty promising, something reflected in the insane amount of connections that the server has to the community. However, there is one thing that makes Hermitcraft so special, and that is diversity. You see, most SMPs bring together a number of pretty similar creators, and this definitely works, but it also can really limit the potential of these servers. Hermitcraft, on the other hand, has cracked the code. By featuring such a diverse range of creators, the server appeals to pretty much anyone. Hermitcraft doesn't just have a group of redstoners or a group of talented role players. Instead, the Hermits all have a range of really interesting and unique skills that set the server apart. Mumbo, whilst technically skilled, is becoming an incredible builder. B-Dubs continuously blows our minds away by bringing art into Minecraft. Meanwhile, Grian shows us how to have fun and mess about with lore in the game. And then you can't forget the likes of XB Crafted, Wells, Beef, Hypno and Zombie Cleo, who remind us of the charm of early Minecraft YouTube. Etho and Doc, whilst incredibly talented builders, always manage to push the game to its limits. Meanwhile, the likes of Tango, Impulse, Cub, Zed and Pearl consistently create games within Minecraft that are honestly jaw-dropping. People like Joe and Ren remind us that life isn't too serious, while Skiz explores the deep psychological elements of life that make us human. Gem, Pearl, Corrales, Scar and Joel all are masters of colour and expression, adding that extra level of beauty to the server. And who can forget the server's diligent admin Exumavoid, who really carries the whole thing on its back. Essentially, Hermitcraft succeeds because it embraces diversity. By showcasing a smorgasbord of uniquely talented creators, the server succeeds in both captivating its audience and innovating the Minecraft YouTube space. This sets the server apart from anything we've ever seen before, which explains why it's so damn popular. I love Hermitcraft, and if you've watched this point, I'm gonna assume you do too. On that note, thank you once again for making it to the end of the video. This has taken me a while, and I'm sure it's taken you about just as long to get through it all. This has definitely been a big journey for me, and I definitely intend to make more videos on Hermitcraft in the future, so if you've enjoyed this one, consider subscribing. Anyway, I've been JJ, you've been amazing as ever, and I will see you all in the next one.